Are we ready? All right. Are we ready, Lisa? Welcome, everybody. It's 6:02. We want to welcome you to our city council meeting this evening. We'll begin with a pledge of allegiance. If you'll stand and repeat after me. And then we'll have an opening prayer by Councilman Deal.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll just say it.
Our Father in heaven, we are so grateful to be able to meet together as a body of representation for the citizens of South Weber. Please bless us with thy wisdom and thy discernment to be able to judge right and wrong for what is best for the citizens and our community. And this we pray for humbly in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. First item on the agenda tonight, we've got introduction to our Utah State Representative, Steve Handy. Utah State Legislative districts were recently adjusted by the state, and Representative Steve Handy of District 16, who is now representative of a portion of South Weber. South Weber was divided into two different districts. Steve asked if he could come and introduce himself to us tonight and address us. We'll turn some time to Steve.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just stand here somewhere.
Just if you're going to go to the podium in the back, if you'd like.
Go back there. I like that. I have a map I'm going to show you here, but I've got Delise Ellsworth, who was my new intern. We just met today. She's a student at the University of Utah. And but I'll state my name here for you. I'm Stephen Handy. I'm a state representative representing District 16 that now includes part of South Weber. Is this Mayor, is this your first meeting?
This is my very first
After
meeting.
being sworn in, huh? Sworn in and then swore
A
out.
week ago, that's what I said. We were,
Yeah,
we'd be ready to get sworn
yeah.
in.
And do I have this right? Then Councilman Dills he's new.
He is.
He's new. And Angie, you were reelected. See, I've done my homework.
You have.
And these are the oldsters. These are the.
They're the ones that are going to keep us in line.
Well, I wanted to, I have a handout for each one of you, and Elise, if you could do this, give one to the city manager here, David, and one here to the council members and to the mayor, and then I can just talk to that a little bit, and I want to show you the map. So anyway, I live in Layton, just up over the hill, and I have served in the legislature. I'm coming into my 12th legislative session. Prior to that, I served 8 years on the Layton City Council. So what you're doing here is very familiar to me, and I have been in front of the South Weber City Council before on other matters, and so I'm just really happy to be here. But as the census changed and things changed around, you have an opportunity to, I don't know if it's an opportunity or not, you're forced to do it, to redistrict. And you know, I was talking to Blair here that I know, and it's not it's typically not the House and the Senate districts that are controversial. They kind of fall into place, and the state school board falls into place. What gets controversial are the congressional seats. But we stayed in the first congressional district, so for that's for us here in northern Utah, it's not controversial. So, but I was very excited to I really was to see a little adjustment. As this started to adjust. Each of the House seats represents about 42,000 in the growth in the state. And you can see that in my memo to you. I show you the percentages. So this district has a large part, 37,000 or so in Layton. And then of that 42,000, 6% is South Weber, 6% is a portion of Clearfield. And then that funny little area up here, unincorporated area of the county. And so I was really excited to see as we negotiated and kind of see this come together. As I was telling Council Member Halverson, I've talked to some people, and Bill, maybe you remember, former mayor here, a friend of mine, but it's been a lot of years since anyone from Davis County has represented South Weber, any portion of South Weber. And so I think it's really neat, and I'm really honored to have that opportunity to meet you and to work with you. And the legislative session kicks off a week from today. And I have, in the memo to you, invited you to contact me. I added all of you to my newsletter and your city email, and I've given you a bio there about me to know who I am a little bit and what I do. And I was born and raised. My wife and I were born and raised in Ogden. I was telling Blair that we've lived in Layton now most of our lives. You know, you kind of move around and you don't expect to know what's going to happen, but we thought it would be a pit stop, but it's been a long, nice pit stop. And in Layton. So we've really seen Layton grow and this area grow a lot. I wanted to show you, if I could, Mayor, just show you just quickly a visual of this district. I was talking to David about it, and he said I sent him the links and everything, but let's just do this, and I can stand here. Just stand, let's see, right here, and maybe we'll do a little show and tell here. Hopefully we don't have this upside down, but yeah, there it is. I don't know if you'll pick that up in a minute. Is it okay if we walk up here and
Sure.
show it to you a little bit closer?
You bet.
It's all like that. So Representative Miles, Kelly Miles from South Ogden had a large portion of South Weber. So as you come here, I live over here by the golf course down over here by Valley View, and then it wraps around here and has this portion of South Weber. And then the district also is this unincorporated, this part of here's 89 running here, you know that. So that's what it is. I thought that was pretty neat that they made those up for us to kind of show you what it is. So there you go.
Okay.
It's also
Thank you.
online. Yeah, I can show everybody and anybody. Where District 16 kind of shapes up and rolls in, you know your geography, of course. But I've given you, like I say, a little memo there that tells you a little bit about me and my little bio and a card. And I'd love to have any of you who are coming to the legislature to contact me to say hello and let me know what I can do to help you. Of course, on the 19th is the Utah League of Cities and Towns Day. It's that third day of the legislature. Typically, if we were starting on Monday, but of course it's MLK, we don't start on Monday. And if you're coming down to the Salt Palace to the luncheon, be happy to come over and say hello to you. I've worked with a number of the youth councils in the other cities in Layton and Clearfield. And if you have a youth council here, happy to engage with them at any time as well. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions. If you have, I see later in the agenda, you were going to talk about legislative issues. And if you have any questions about anything, I can tell you there, I'd be happy to do that. But we're going to go ahead and slip out and let you have your meeting after this little introduction.
Thank you. No, I have no questions. Any council?
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Angie Petty and Haley Alberts, we're both over our youth city council. So
Good.
if we wanted to contact you, should we just send you an email or do you want us to contact your intern?
No, just she will be seeing all of my emails.
Okay.
So just send the email to me and I'll be happy to accommodate and happy to meet with the kids and
Fantastic.
talk
Thank
to them
you so
anytime,
much.
anytime
you.
you want me to do that. The session is going to be, the state is quote unquote awash in money. A lot of these just millions of dollars in federal funds. And the requests for appropriations are just monumental because in those years when there's money, it's even harder than the years when there's no money. because everyone lines up and wants to, and has their hat out, and they're all good projects. So the decision makers will have a lot of work to do to sift through a lot of things. I mean, today I had, the Boy Scouts, I'm going to do a request for appropriation for them. Another group that has a therapy group, going to try and see and get them a little money. So that's the process. And that's the way it works. And I'm just happy to be here and to represent you, and just pledge to you, I'll do the very best I can, and anything I can do for any of you, the door is wide open. I want to help you in any way that I can. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank
Mayor,
you very
may I
much.
ask 2 questions?
Oh, yeah.
Quickly, sorry. Excuse me, 1 question. I'm Haley Alberts. You missed me by about 3 blocks, so I'm not in your district, but you'll be hearing from me.
Good.
Take my name, you'll hear from me. One thing that we have going on in our city right now is some issues with our gravel pits, and we recognize that we need help from our legislatures. How do we get down to meet with you and those in our districts on the other parts of South Weber to come forward with a solution?
Yeah, I think that, and I'm sure that you're doing a lot of work, and you've thought about it for a lot of years.
Mhm.
And I think it's a matter of, working with the staff here, of course, and coming with a plan. And if it comes down to some funding, I mean, sometimes these things take a couple of years, but you start where you start. And I'm happy to engage at any time on that.
Okay.
You've got to have kind of a plan, what you want to do, and then, but you've got, I mean, there's a lot of horsepower. I mean, Senator Milner, who has part here, she's in leadership. President Adams has the other side here. He's the Senate president. So there's a lot of, I'm going to say horsepower that can help with these things.
So I know that you're about to go into session and your time is going to be just gone in that, but I would really like to meet if there's
Anytime.
other council members after the session and
Anytime,
maybe
or
see
even,
what our
or
options
even
are.
during, yeah, but let's talk about it. Thank you
Okay,
for letting
thank
me know
you.
about that. All right. Thank you, Mayor, and best wishes for the rest of your meeting tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, our next agenda item is public comments. Please be respectful. Individuals may speak once for 3 minutes or less. Do not, no remarks from the audience. State your name, your address, direct your comments to the entire council, and the council will not respond. We're open for, we need a motion to open that? Don't think so. So you're on, Paul.
Paul Sturm, 2527 Deer Run Drive. My comments tonight are primarily on procedural and numbering and monitoring. First public comment is on agenda item 9, ordinance 2021-14, private roads. Reference packet page 156 of 218. The last paragraph of the ordinance says passed and adopted on the 11th day of January 22. Yet in the certificate of posting, it says that it was passed and adopted on the 7th day of 2021. I know it's just a typo type thing, but this is an official document. And this is what you as the council are signing up to. The next public comment is reference packet page 160 of 218. I noticed that the numbering of this resolution has changed from the previous documentation practice of using the full year, that is 2022 in the title. I'd like to know if there's a reason for making this change and a request it be standardized as a 4-digit year. Changing this numbering system will make it more difficult to sort, select, and find any resolution or any similar document in the future. And the same thing occurred 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other times throughout this packet. And on the last thing, and also please note that the reference to this resolution as 2022-08 Amendment 7 in the text on page 212 of 318 is from a continuing agreement. As with the numerous other agreements the city has entered into,
Such a system would provide a consistency year over year for this type of agreement renewal situations. A review of past year's agenda and packets demonstrated that there's been a mix of using the 4-digit or the 2-digit, for example, in our document numbering system. This has even occurred in the same meeting agenda where an ordinance and a resolution have been numbered in a different format. Whoops. Once again, I believe the city should establish a standardized numbering system, such as been used recently, that is 2021-15, and thus provide a consistent numbering system for our resolutions, ordinances, etc., from year to year. Use of a more complete numbering system reduces the chance of confusion and permits an easier process for locating a particular document. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul?
Michael Grant, 2622 Deer Run Drive. 2 items. One is, I don't think it's a good idea to have a construction person or a building person, a builder, to be on the planning commission. Nothing personal against anybody, but I think if you're elected into this position, it's one thing. If you're nominated, I mean, how would you not have conflict of interest, kind of rewarding yourself in the deal, in approving packages or parcels? I'm sure Mr. Blakesley here, city attorney, can point us how to prevent this conflict of interest. In any case, whatever decision you make, I'm sure you'll do it in the best interest of the city. Item number 2, the no turn on red sign on the intersection of South Weber Drive and Frontage Road. It's been there for more than a year now. I know UDOT thinks it's the visibility is a problem. We can get into an accident, so they have that sign there. How do we get rid of that sign? My understanding is the ideal way would be to put a 3rd lane there onto 89. Well, the funding, the timing, and all that is going to take a few months or years, I think. So the second option is what's causing the obstruction? The sign, whatever signs are coming in the way, let's move them. Why should we stopping and waiting endlessly for no turn? That should be all. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Any more comments? If not, then we'll move on to our next agenda item. We have a new employee. Name is Marcella White. Marcella White has been hired as our new customer service / utility bills clerk. We are excited to have Marcella join our team. Marcella is the person that citizens meet first when they come into the city hall, and the first person they will hear when they call into the office. We're excited to have Marcella here. She's a great asset to the city, and appreciate her coming to work for South Weber City. Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome, Marcella.
And she has great taste in music, I just want to say. So.
I feel like we need to learn more about that. I'm going to have to talk with you.
Might have to stop in and hear that, huh?
Yeah. Make sure that Joel has the right taste in music. I'll double check on that.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is our audit report by Keddington and Christensen. At the end of each fiscal year, management is responsible for preparation and fair presentation of city financial statements in accordance with accounting principles. This includes the design, the implementation, and maintenance of internal control relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of financial statements. And we've got our auditor here with us this night, so we'll turn some time over to them.
Well, thank you. My name is Gary Keddington. I'm the managing partner and partner over the audit of the city. And tonight, my responsibility is to talk to you about how the audit went. The numbers are from June, from June of 2021. So they're a little bit old, but the process of how the audit went is very important to be reported to the council. If you have questions related to the numbers, Mark is very, very familiar with those. I am too, but those are his numbers, and my job is to audit those numbers. So we have to try to keep those things separate. And when people understand that, they know who to go ask. So tonight, I'd like to tell you a little bit about how the audit went. There's certain things formally that I need to tell you, and you hear these every year because I have to say these certain things every year. And then after that, I'd like to go into a little bit more about the audit process, so you have a little bit more of an idea what goes on in an audit. So during the audit, we did not have any disputes with management where we had to bring in any kind of other CPA firm. At times, you could have a dispute over accounting rule, and one, Mark thinks it's one way, I think it's one way, and we can't agree to it, so then we have to bring in someone else. That did not happen. There are not any, in these financial statements, there are no adjustments that were not put into those that we thought that should be. And the audit actually went quite smooth. We had the cooperation from management. We didn't have any contention with them over any kind of issues in getting the documents or anything of that nature. So the audit went is exactly as it should have gone in that respect. The cooperation from your staff was excellent. They were right on trying to get us the information as soon as we asked for that, and they were excellent in that. So now I would also like to go a little bit over what the audit process is, and we have the audit. And if you go to page 1, catch my glasses here before they fall off. So if you go to page 1, that is the audit opinion. And what it says here, this opinion is, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements that are in here fairly represent the financial statements as they should be in accordance with the accounting standards. That there is no deviation. Now you think, well, why is that a big deal? Actually, it's a really big deal. The reason is that there's standard accounting standards out there so that everybody accounts for the same type of transactions the same way. If we didn't, you'd never be able to compare with anybody. We would call accounts receivables or cash in this city something, and in another city we would call it different, and you'd never be able to compare yourselves or even understand the financial statements. So it's really important that these financial statements are not only the numbers, but the presentation of the numbers, how they're actually put into these statements is very important. I mean, there's rules on related to how it comes down the page and how it gets presented. So in long-term, short-term, so you have an understanding really of what these financials are. So much it's so important that at the end of the audit, when we write this report, I have to go through a document that's over 100 pages long to make sure, every little checklist, to make sure that all of that is in compliance. You'll even look in those financial statements back in the footnotes. We have to go make sure those footnotes are presented correctly, that all of those numbers not only match, but the wording is in a way that a person be able to understand that. A lot of times in accounting, we use a lot of terms that not everybody is going to understand. And so those footnotes are tried to make so that everybody could understand what we're saying. In there, you have a lot of information about your debts. We have to make sure that all of the requirements related to your debts are put in there. So really, it takes quite a process to go through this entire document to make sure everything is actually in compliance with the way it's supposed to be done. And our opinion says that this document actually does have is in compliance with all that, and the numbers are materially correct. Now, when I say materially, hope you appreciate that as auditors, we don't look at every transaction. If we did, we would live here. It's not relevant to do that. It's really not important to do that. But what it is important to do is make sure that it's materially. What that means is that if there is a mistake in there or a number that doesn't match up exactly, the difference between what is exactly correct and what is in there would not change what you do or what you think about it. So like if you have $10 and you're missing 1 penny, it doesn't change really how you think about it, does it? But that doesn't mean that we're not looking for everything that we can. It's just that we don't look at every transaction. Then what I wanted to do is go back to our other opinions that we give, and that's back on page 49. If Lisa, you can find that, that's way towards the back. It'll say compliance just before. Yeah, there you go. So what this opinion is, or this is actually a report on the internal controls related to the city. Now, these are financial controls. These aren't controls that are going on over in the Parks Department or the roads or the police or anything like that. These are related to the financials. What we talk about internal controls, you hear that word a lot, don't you? And do people really understand what that means? So I thought I'd give you a little bit of an example of what goes on. So let's say a check, an invoice comes in, we're supposed to write a check and pay a bill. So of course the invoice comes in, we just write out a check and we sign it and it goes, right? No, a lot more goes on than that. That's what you would think on the surface what happens, but that's not what happens. So an invoice comes in, then the department head has to make sure that that is correct invoice for the right amount, that they receive the service, and that it's appropriate, that it's the right vendor, so that we don't have any fake vendors coming in. And then somebody has to actually code that and put that into the accounting system, meaning that did it go into the right budget line, so that when you get financials and you look at the budgets, you actually know that's the right line that it's supposed to be going into. And so somebody is double checking all of that to make sure that that is happening through the whole process. So there's a lot more that goes on than just getting an invoice and writing a check. There's a lot of double checks to make sure that everything is appropriate when we actually issue that check. There's a lot of reasons we do that, but the main reason is that we're trying to safeguard the assets of the city. These are the public's funds, and we have to make sure that they get spent appropriately as the council has directed and doesn't go any other way. We did not find, as we went through, what we have to do is there's 4 main areas that we look at in these internal controls. Is we look at your cash disbursements, meaning the checks that went out, the invoices, that whole process, your payroll process, how you receive the money, and also how you do your financial closing, meaning that journal entries and things like that that Mark does to get the books into balance in some areas. When we do that, we look at exactly that whole entire process, and we interview and we look to see that this is what they tell us that they're doing. But as auditors, of course, we don't believe anybody. So we pull some random transactions and we walk through those transactions like a check. We'll pull an invoice and say, okay, how did this invoice actually go all the way through? You said you reviewed them. You said that somebody did this and that. And we walk through all of that to make sure that they're actually performing the way they said they were. What's really interesting is you can have all the policies you want, but that doesn't mean that actually is what's happening. And so we can look at the policy, but we want to know what's really going on. And that's why we take the transaction and walk through them. So we walk through your checks, we walk through payroll transactions, we walk through the money coming in to make sure that all those processes are looking right. We also then have to ask a lot of different questions and look at another huge document that we have to complete so that we know a lot about what's going on in the city and those controls. You'd be amazed that really about half of our time is more on compliance and internal controls than it is actually looking at the number, because there's so much involved. If you think about it, if the controls are right and the processes are right, then it should produce a good number. So that's why it's such an emphasis on that. The next page, on page 51, yep, that one. The state of Utah requires all auditors to come in and to look for some compliance issues related to the state law. And the state auditors actually give us a book that we have to go down through, and they give us exactly the things that we're supposed to look at. And this takes 2 to 3 days to actually do. It's not something that just is easily done overnight. And what we do is we list in here the areas that we looked at this year. Each year they have certain areas that we have to look at each year, and then certain areas that we look at every 3 years. And the areas that we looked at this year was budgetary compliance, fund balance, justice courts, restricted taxes and related revenues, your fraud risk assessment, your governmental fees, your Open and Public Meetings Act, and your enterprise transfers. And when you understand what we have to do about each one of those, just think about your enterprise transfers. Enterprise transfers are okay as long as you follow a lot of rules. And the only way you can do it is to follow all these rules, and we have to go through every step to make sure the city complies in doing those transfers from the enterprise funds. We also have to do the Open and Public Meetings Act. Make sure you get your training. If you don't get the training, then we write you up. And then there's also, did all the minutes get posted correctly up on time? Did the agendas go up on time? Did you comply with the agendas, say one thing, and what business you actually did? So we'll read an agenda of a meeting. We'll pick several meetings. We'll read the agenda, and then we'll read the minutes to make sure you didn't do any action that you didn't have on that agenda, because you're not allowed to do that. So we keep going through all of these compliances to make sure that you're in compliance with these state laws. And we didn't find anywhere in all of our testing that you had not complied. All the things we looked at, you had actually complied and done the things that we're supposed to. So that doesn't happen very often, let me tell you. It's really hard sometimes to get those minutes up within 3 days. I mean, heaven forbid somebody actually gets sick or there's a holiday or you forget about it, because day 4 does not count. Day 4 does not count. You pass or you fail on all these tests. The other one that was really interesting is the fraud risk assessment. That's one that Mark has to go through the whole internal control again, present it to the council, and it has to be issued up to the state. We make sure that, yes, he does it and he gets it to the state, but more importantly, that he brought it to the council and showed you what the results of that was, because that's what really the crux of it is. They can do that work, get up to the state. If nobody ever checks that it came to you, then it doesn't get to the right people. So there's a lot of things, like I said, we checked on this, and actually this is the first year here that we've been auditing that we don't have any findings. We went through an awful lot of work. I was here many, many days. I did the majority of the work myself, simply because I like coming here. I don't have to, but I like coming here. So if there's any questions that you might have about the audit process or what we found or anything else.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, how long did it take to do the audit?
It
From start to
takes,
finish?
well, like, we do it in 2 different sections is what we do. Actually, it ends up being 3. And so what we do is we come in right at the end of the year, or in June or July, we'll come in and we'll do a lot of compliance stuff. Because at that point, you've posted your minutes or you haven't, right? So we can do a lot of the state compliance stuff at that time, but the numbers aren't ready yet. And then what we do is, so that takes about 3, 4, sometimes 5 days to walk through your internal controls. Some of you have maybe received fraud questions that we send out to the council. If you haven't received them, you will. And the mayor, of course, you will definitely get questions that we ask you a lot. And so that takes several days there. And then when we come in and do the actual audit of the numbers and the other compliance that we have to do after year end, that took us probably 8 days, 9 days. And then after that, what happens is, you think, oh, the audit's done. No, because now we have to go back and produce this document. We have all the numbers, and now it takes 3, 4 days just to produce all this document and go through all those checklists that I was talking about. So total, it takes probably 3 weeks to go through an audit, 3, sometimes up to 4 weeks, depending on the complexity of what you have done that year. Last year, it took us probably an extra week last year, just because of all the construction that was going on, that it took us a long time to get through all of the developments and all that was going on. It just was very complex, and we had to take our time to make sure that all that was right. So that's about what it takes. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I appreciate you breaking that down for us in ways that were easy to understand. Thank you for coming in.
Oh, you bet. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. Thanks so much.
You bet.
And Mac, good job.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Steph.
Yes, Mac.
That is a great improvement from 6, 8 years ago. It's awesome.
Okay, our next item is the approval of our consent agenda, which consists of December's check register, November's budget to actual, and December's 7 minutes. Any discussion on consent agenda? Any changes or anything?
Were the changes Haley recommended made? If so, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Seconded by Haley. Okay, all in favor then, say aye.
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 Okay. Next item is is the recreation vehicle park cabins. During the city council meeting on December the 7th, 2021, RV park owner McKay Winkle requested to change the style of the RV park cabins that they were going to be installing. The council considered the request and ultimately continued the item and tasked staff with looking into how the change request would affect the floodplain and the fire protection for the park. Staff has worked to understand both issues and has determined the following. The potential style change does not impact the floodplain. Structures built in the floodplain must be built at least 1 foot above the floodplain level to obtain a floodplain certificate. Style of building will not impact the obtaining of this floodplain certificate, only the elevation will affect that. The potential style change necessitates a reevaluation and recalculation of fire flow in the water lines. This, to my understanding, has been completed and that the fire flow is sufficient for this change in the building style. So, McKay, do we have you here on Zoom? Is
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
that McKay?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, sorry, my camera is not working, so you guys are blessed for that reason.
Can you
Get to see
hear
my
us?
face. Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
McKay, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
It looks
Maybe
like
not.
his speaker was going up and down. It must be our speakers.
Oh. He can hear us.
Yes, you can hear us. Is there anything that you would like to add, McKay?
We're trying to get him
Yeah,
on.
can you
speaker
hear me at all? Maybe just give me a thumbs up once you hear my voice. Check, thumbs up. Anyone? Hello? Hello?
While we wait for that, do you mind if I ask a question?
Go right ahead, Haley.
Just a question for staff regarding this. Oh,
Oh,
sounds
we
like
can
we got
hear
him.
Oh, super.
Do you want to move
Go
back to?
ahead, go ahead. Go ahead, Haley, if you like.
Okay. Just regarding if this is approved, it does not make any changes to the development agreement or anything, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Go ahead,
in attendance up there with you guys is Brian Morrow. He's of Simply Built. He's the
Okay,
also does Rhino Rock. He's kind of the mastermind and knows all things structural engineering, design, et cetera. If you guys would like to ask him questions, great. I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have as well. So,
questions anyone have?
I'll ask a couple quick
For them.
questions. And I apologize, I'm new to all of this, so some of these may be redundant or not the right question to ask. The last time I was watching the meeting a month ago when we were first seeing the cabins, there was some discussion about whether these meet the same design original that was presented to the council. I know it was brought up. I don't know if it went any further than that. I don't know if that is something that's even in consideration with this. I don't know where that left off. I don't know who to ask.
I think, was that in reference to the cabins he was showing or this new
Yeah.
design? I think it was in the cabin skirting and stuff like that.
Yeah, they were showing the cabins previously were kind of a log cabin type of style, and this is more of a industrial type of
Mhm.
forestry service one.
I think that was my
That was
question.
Haley's comment.
Yeah. I looked in the development agreement and specifically what it said that I could find regarding the skirting was that it just needed to be manufactured, but it was mostly geared towards RVs and not so much towards tiny homes. We didn't really have a lot of further detail in our code regarding the tiny homes that I could find in our code or in our development agreement. I could be wrong.
No, that's correct. And that, my second question then actually went right on to the, so are these considered tiny homes? And are they allowed within that zoning and that development, because before it was everything had to be mobile, and now they're a tiny home or an equivalent to it, even if it's just a rental one. How does I wasn't able to see anything on it. How do we do with those?
Yeah, so if you look in our city code, under the definition of tiny home, it actually references us to a recreational vehicle.
Mhm.
And so it kind of pushes it that way. We used to have a definition of tiny home that was amended, if I recall off the top of my head, prior to this being finalized and the development agreement being finalized. So the intention was to allow tiny homes, small cabins that were minimal in square footage, that were more permanent but still mobile, and allow those as part of the park. And the development agreement allowed, I believe, up to 27. And that was the language.
23 maybe.
Oh, 23,
Yeah, I
sorry.
think that's right.
Up to 23 of that style.
Okay, so the pictures that I saw back in December, and again, I apologize for my ignorance, I'm new. They look to be more of a built on a foundational type of home, which kind of eliminates the mobile portion of a tiny home. So do they still qualify as a tiny home, or do they now qualify as a permanent structure that's there? And
From a fire perspective, it was evaluated like a permanent structure. So one of the things that I know fire looked at, and the idea of mobility was obviously discussed, during the entire process and the development process and approval process. And the fire looked at that, and because of certain elements to it, although those mobile types can be hooked up to a trailer, there's still a time element of unhooking them from the gas lines and water lines and things like that. So they're kind of a semi-permanent but still mobile situation.
so these aren't actually put into a foundation. They're not cemented.
The new ones are not cemented in, but they are on a pad.
Okay.
Right. And so it could be removed, as McKay described in December. And I'm not an expert on that necessarily, but it's a much longer process to move those than it would be the other cabins.
I think that depends on how close the fire is.
And I think also, and just to consider in light, those mobile units were going to be placed in flood zone areas. And so if now the structures are out of that flood zone, maybe they're viewed as differently, whereas that mobility isn't as critical. I don't know. That was kind of just the rationale at the time, I think.
To McKay's point there, to add a little bit to that, it has been analyzed where the floodplain is on the site, and almost entirely the row of sites fronting 84, I-84, or at least next to 84, are out of the floodplain.
Okay.
Most of the rest of the park does have elements of floodplain. And so if you were to put those cabins on those sites, then it's not in the floodplain at all. But even if there is a structure in the floodplain, like was evaluated and stated, you can build in the floodplain as long as it is at a certain elevation. And so that doesn't really affect whether you want this style or the other style. Location is not truly affected that way.
Okay. And then my last question was just in the packet, it described that we were waiting on some type of line tests that were supposed to be done, that they weren't at the time of this. I guess procedurally, why are we looking at something if we don't have the test that could actually prevent this?
It's been done.
It's
It
been
has
done.
been done?
That's
That
what
was
I-
passed.
That's what I said.
Okay,
Yeah.
I missed that.
There's an
I'm
amendment
sorry,
to the
Mary.
packet that shows those details.
It came in
More
yesterday.
papers and things to read is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
Just one more. We tried to make it just one more. That was completed on Thursday, and we were able to update that material. It wasn't sent out until yesterday. But the fire flow tests were completed by a third party. It originally was going to be completed earlier, scheduling, pushed that back. And so that's why it didn't make the packet originally. But the fire flows came back with a significant amount of capacity that all of these structures could be considered permanent and would still meet fire code from a square footage standpoint.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That was all I had.
Any other questions?
I have a question for McKay. So, Councilwoman Alberts is not a major fan of these, but I kind of dig them. So I think it's going to be better overall. So my question is, how are we going to make these cohesive with the rest of the project, with the current clubhouse you have there and the other building? What's your design? How are you going to change the design of these in any way? Or are you just going to have them painted the same color? What's your process on that?
It's a good question. So the drawings we showed you, I think, are just simply built kind of default finish style. It's not something we've spent the time or resources to figure out of how we make them look cohesive yet, though. I mean, that's a big part of the park that, I mean, we don't want something not cohesive there. So they would absolutely kind of jive with the same style of those other buildings. What that is, I don't know. It's going to be kind of a lumbery looking finish, I would think. Maybe tie in some of those archways that we have at the kind of the peaks of the roof, maybe similar in color. I'm not sure, honestly. We'll probably be working with Brian's team to figure that out. But I mean, they're nicer, better. I mean, I don't think we would consider these if it wasn't an upgrade to the previous cabin. I mean, we're proud of what we built, and we don't want to bring in anything that doesn't fit. So I don't know if that answers any of your questions specifically, but it's something we're going to work on.
McKay, this is Blair. Maybe along those lines, I mean, I agree with Angie. I'm okay with approving these and moving forward, but I also don't want to approve something that doesn't be cohesive with the development. Everybody said, well, why the heck did the city let you build that, pump station over there in the middle of that? Because we see a lot of precast pump stations and bathrooms. And sorry, Brandon,
What's up with that?
and I put a lot of them in. I'm all for it, but not to live in either. So, but that would be my only concern. I mean, if we do approve it, can we say it needs to be upon a review of the final design? I mean, so that you can move forward and get that design, but I don't want to just give you a carte blanche to put a square box there.
Mayor.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, McKay. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
go ahead, Haley.
Would it be okay if we had Brian come and kind of expound on his abilities with that?
That's fine.
Is up for it, yeah.
And just to clarify, I just didn't like the ones that you submitted in the packet, but I do love the buildings that have been built over there. They are very nice. So if we can find a way to create cohesiveness with the buildings that are there, I do favor. They do look better than what was previously submitted.
Okay, great. Brian Morrow is my name. I'm with a company called Simply Built. We're actually out of Provo. We've been down there for 26 years now. We have another company down there called Rhino Rock. We do a lot of the concrete fencing that you see all around the valley, and our company is the one that started all that. So some of that technology kind of lends to this, not to a full extent, but basically what they are, so that you know, is that it's a building system that we developed that is a combination. It's basically, it has a steel frame members. So it meets all the IBC 2018 codes. So it'll have a stamped engineering. It'll meet all the fire codes. So it'll meet all the requirements of what the city requires in terms of engineering. It is a component built system. So it's not pre-manufactured and then just brought in, but the building process is very quick, especially for these type of units. So you can get to the point where you're dried in for each unit in about 4 days. And it's much better in terms of insulation, walls and floors for R40 insulation. Insulation is gained through an EPS, extended polystyrene foam, in combination with a steel structure that's embedded within the foam. And the roof is R50, so much higher than what you would get from a pre-manufactured, like an RV or something like that. So the carrying costs are going to be much better. All the structural components none of the structural components are wood, which means it won't ever rot. And so even if it were to get wet, it's not going to damage the structural integrity of the building like it would with some other types of buildings. Unique thing about our system in terms of the floodplain, just so that you know, is that it does have a footing, and the building is connected to it, because in order to meet code, it has to meet uplift requirements and things like that. So it's tied to it, but it's tied to the footing through structural screws at the frame members. And but the floor is set so that it's approximately about 30 inches above the grade. So even if you are in the floodplain, the top of the main floor is well above that. So you don't have to build up a pad for it. So our footing will be a typical continuous footing, but then there's crawl space underneath it so that it can be above that area. So it's great in regards to that. As far as design is concerned, there's all kinds of different finishes to it. So prior to attaching any kind of finishes to it, there's attachments points at 2 foot on center, both on the inside and the outside. So the inside would normally be a fire rated drywall type of thing. And then on the outside, you can do a combination of some type of a wood siding, stucco, metal siding, whatever that you want to be able to put on it. So there's a lot of design type of things that you can do with the exterior of the building. Typically what we submitted was a single slope style roof. Those are really popular right now. They're fairly easy to construct. And so you can do some things. So there are some design flexibility within it. But again, these are small structures. In the event if they did have to boot, technically they could be unscrewed from the footing with the seismic straps that are attached to it, and the building could be removed. I don't see any reason why they would. We've had
Removed, you mean drug?
You mean how would you move it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens is that the floor has a steel members that go through
Okay.
it. So typically you just slide a couple I-beams up, pick it up, put it on the truck and move it.
Oh,
I just don't see why you would need to. Just we built quite a few of these back in Missouri, and I actually had one that flooded. We just squeegeed it out and let it dry out for a couple of days, and it was fine. There was no structural damage to it. So it's a much better product than what you would get in the traditional RV type of a style. It's going to be more environmentally friendly, use a lot less energy in heating and cooling.
Where you said it was a solid foundation, there's no gaps then
There's
with
no
the raised
gaps.
floor? That's
Yeah, there's no gaps. So it's a traditional, we actually use, and it's within the code, it's within our International Residential Code. We use what's called a shallow frost protected footing. And so our form is actually made out of EPS foam, and it stays in place. And the nice thing about that is it can be put more towards the grade level so that you don't have a deep footing that goes all the way down into the ground. And that meets all the code. So.
Okay.
Any questions
you.
that you might have for me?
That's very helpful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
when we do this and if it moves forward, when we do, you should come out and check it out. It's really cool. It doesn't require any heavy equipment to put together. We have all kinds of families who put them together. And so,
Would you remind me of the square footage of these?
yeah, I think they're
Any
going to be around 300 square feet. I
Perfect.
think pretty close to that.
Thank
So-
you.
And it was
I think I
called.
showed them a 400 square foot unit, I think is what I showed the city.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
between 300 and 400 square feet, typically about 12 feet deep, and then whatever length that is. We can go up from 12 up to 18 in terms of depth, and we can go whatever length that we need in a 4-foot increment.
And that was called Simply Built, right?
Yeah, it's called
Okay.
Simply Built.
Thank you.
So how do we proceed from here? What direction are we needing to give?
So can we make a motion that requires some type of cohesiveness?
Can we just make a motion? Maybe McKay can voice his opinion. Can we make a motion to approve these so you can move forward with the design but then just give us a final design review? Is that too much?
Sure. I mean, I just want it to be
Provide
reasonable.
that review.
Say that again?
My question is, who would you like to provide that review? You just need to state who you're giving that authority to. of who would do the review? Do
Mr.
you want to
Well,
keep that?
do we
want to
Council,
keep
do
that
staff.
review? I'm kind of asking, does the council want that review, or do you want staff to make that review? You're gonna get the blame, Angie, just so you know.
It's okay, I like it.
mean,
I'm sorry. I'll
It
take
it
it.
does make me nervous to say approved, but then if somebody doesn't like the design that we like, if they have bad
I'm
taste.
not gonna choose
like,
colors, McKay. I'm
are
not
they
the guy
gonna,
that choose
that's
colors.
that's what I worry if they say.
That's
I
actually
love-
one of my concerns, because if I'm understanding this correctly, this isn't necessarily something we need to approve anyway. It meets code and it meets the development agreement. So I don't necessarily want to put more burden on you if it's not necessary, although you are fantastic to work with us. So that's my question is,
Well, it
are
did-
we
it just
requiring more than necessary? Is
But
that
it
what
just
we wanna
changed
do?
the original presentation. The original ones were
That's true.
Mhm.
mobile. I mean, truly on wheels mobile.
That's true.
And so.
I
I
think
mean,
it's
as
a
long as-
legislative act by the city council, right? Acknowledging that that's different than the original design, the original proposal. This is a request to change that and do this different style. And so if the council wants to see the design, you can say that. If that's the case, rather than give an approval, it sounds like to me you would like to see it before granting an approval, to McKay's point, to say you've got it, but you actually don't. I think it just needs to be one decision.
Well, to me, I kind of back up, what legislative authority do we have for aesthetics? The development agreement
None.
doesn't spell that out, so, I mean,
In fact,
if he wants to make them all pink and fluorescent green, we don't have any code that says they can't do that, right?
Did you have a comment, Jamie? I missed that.
We do have a code.
confirm that what Clint says is accurate.
So,
We do have a code that refers to the feel and.
Oh, yeah, well,
and
HB
aesthetics of-
95.
I know it, I
Screwed us
know,
on
but
that
we
one,
still have a
Blair.
code there that says that, so
Okay,
McKay
so-
will live with it. He won't complain.
right, I mean, it's back on him from a standpoint of, is he catering to the person who likes this style versus that style,
He's gonna go with me. I'm easier to please.
Yeah.
Could we do something that just makes it compatible with the buildings that are already there?
Yeah, we can say that.
I mean, because I think that's simple.
Just a general, yeah.
Yeah, because if
In
it looks,
general.
postmodern, all of a sudden to have these, that looks odd, but if it looks like the buildings, and I believe they're, stone and wood and have a real nice look to them, as long as it looked in that same, and I'm not saying it has to be stone, I'm just saying, as long as it was comparable to that, I think that would be an easy recommendation to make without having to get too
I agree.
deep into their.
Agreed. And I don't necessarily feel the need to come back and review it if we're not going to approve it. We'll just review it and say, yep, review it. So it's an extra step for the developer without us being able to make any changes. So,
I'm fine with that. The only concern I have is the subjectiveness, who's gonna be the
Exactly.
final judge?
Yeah.
Who's gonna say that's close enough, and well, I don't think that's close.
do we leave it to
It
McKay to
would
be the
Mc-
final
It
judge?
would be McKay, I guess.
Yeah.
That's my
So-
vote right there.
So it's a motion that encourages the developer to include cohesiveness of the project. Is that
Sounds good, let's do
work?
that.
Okay, I'm gonna do this, guys.
Get it done.
All right, I make a motion to approve, I'm gonna use this cool little chart you guys gave me. Move to approve request to utilize a new cabin design with the following suggested amendments. Developer strives to create a cohesive tiny home with the buildings that are currently in existence. Boom?
I will second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you, guys. I think. it'll be a-
Thank you,
Thanks,
McKay.
McKay. Thank you,
Sure.
Brian. Oh,
Usually, yes.
yeah.
was there anyone that opposed that?
No.
Thought they were all unanimous. Okay. Our next agenda item then is ordinance 2021-14, our private right-of-way. We're going to turn this over to Trevor.
All righty, I'll let you see my face. I'm a
I need to see somebody's mouth move to know what they're saying, so. All right. Lisa and I sent you a PowerPoint if you want to pull that up. Sorry. That was like right as the meeting started, so I apologize for that. Staff went back and reviewed the minutes for the last meeting in December and put together some suggestions based on the comments that we received on the 5 different options that are available. We didn't give you 5 options this time on Blair's request, so no, I think on all of her requests it was a bit much. But we did give I titled it simplified, and that thing, it's not really simplified. It's just 1 versus 5. Some of the main things to consider with that was the inclusion of all zones to allow a version of private right-of-ways in all of the zones to facilitate private landowners' use of that property. Discussion of city services and guaranteed services for the community. We discussed, you want to go ahead and start that, Lisa? I know you're working on it so hard. I'm sorry. Okay. So there's 4 general comments that we gained throughout it. So we kind of mixed those all up in a funnel and gave you our updated ordinance. So you can go ahead and advance, Lisa. The first was added to every zone. So some limitations would be allowing them for maximum dwelling units per lot or lots. As we were discussing, this is a recommendation from the staff. The city council has the purview to adjust that number up or down or whatever which way, or eliminate that. One concern was just allowing it in a zone as a blanket statement would allow it within any development that is any size. And I know there was a concern about limiting the acreage and conversation about maybe anything 5 acres or less or 4 acres or less. That was some conversation. What we proposed would be a 4 dwelling unit or lots maximum for that. We figure in an RM that would equate to about an acre. In RLM, RL, that would be about 2 acres, right? So you could add various averages throughout there. So we felt that that was a sufficient number. It is higher than the 2 that is currently allowed, but it's sufficient to allow for family usage, but not a large development of a property. That's up to interpretation and decision for the council. That was just our suggestion on allowing it in every zone. We did discuss allowing any cross section within the RLM, RM, RL, and ag zones, have them allow 50-foot right-of-way, 32-foot right-of-way, and a 22-foot right-of-way within any of those, any combination of that, just depending on the needs for those properties. Do you want me to present all of this and then have a discussion afterwards, Mayor? Is that?
I think so. Is that
Okay.
Can I ask one quick question though on definition of lots?
That's held within our code. So lot would be, I can get you the definition for that. I've read it a few dozen times, but I'm not verbatim yet.
So while you're pulling that up, just an example, if there's 4 lots and they put they haven't built anything on it, but they put a private right of way down there, and then at some point they want to divide one of those lots and create, 5th or 8 lots out of 4, whatever, then they would have to give up the private right of way.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
So a lot, per our definition, is a parcel of land occupied or to be occupied by a main building or group of main buildings and accessory buildings together as such yards, open spaces, lot widths, and lot areas are required by this title, having frontage upon a street except for group dwellings. Where more than one dwelling is placed on a lot, each dwelling structure shall be provided with a minimum lot area as required for one such dwelling on a lot in the same zone as the lot
definition. I know that was probably more than we needed to do, but you asked, so I gave it.
So real quick question, follow up on what Quinn was saying then. If they have 4 buildings already on it, they want to subdivide further, they have to give up that private road. Well, then that actually then reverts back to the city. And now it is a city road that we have to maintain regardless of the condition that it's already been in, correct?
It would have to meet city standards in order to be converted back. So it would be a conversation at development at that point. So if they had 4 lots and they wanted to extend and develop the back 20 acres, right? Then we as a development team on a review and through the development process would require a city standard street to feed into that subdivision. Does that make sense? So they would have to bring that road up to standard. If they were not able to, then they would not be able to develop the remaining acreage on their property, or provide a different access point.
I was just going to add to but what we are requiring, or what we're proposing to require, is that these roads be built basically to city standard anyways, at least as far as, road base thickness and asphalt thickness and curb and gutter and those types of things.
So what they would be paying for is the expansion of that. So if their right of way is 32 feet or the street is 32 feet, they would have to expand that out to the 40 feet that's required by the city standards currently in that instance, which is not atypical. That happens quite a bit when we have development conversations. They want to use existing roads that don't meet city standards. We would require them to upsize those to current city standards.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we can, and just to note, that was just for that verbiage was just added to RM, RLM, and RL to allow for the private right-of-ways in every zone.
Lisa, will you go back one? Okay, so it says added to every zone. That's not correct.
Well, yes, we expanded it to every zone. This language was added to the 3 that were not allowed previously.
Language 1 and 2
Yes.
is just for RM, RLM,
RLM, and RL.
and RL. Okay, thank you.
This was already included, other than we did put the 4 dwelling units in RA. So I guess not RA, sorry, just A. I always want to say it's RA because it's easier. We have R everything else. So just in ag, we did add the 4 dwelling units. That can be amended if that's not what's desired there, but we felt that was a consistent application across zones. So yeah, when I say added to every zone, that we added it to the remaining 3 that didn't previously allow for that in the last drafts. One conversation was about this. I'm going to get this wrong, so I'm going to make sure I read it right. The covenants, conditions, and restrictions for an HOA or other governing body for that neighborhood. Those basically we added that the CC&Rs shall be recorded and run with the land. That is a current practice. We do that, but it wasn't in code when we were reviewing that, so we felt we should add that so that it was very clear that we record that when they do the.
So you're saying it will actually be part of the deed versus any other recording? So it's attached to the deed and it will continue forward on it.
Right. When they do a title report, it'll show up on that title report. It'll be connected to the property in perpetuity.
Okay. And I believe deed it trumps almost everything else out there, correct? Because the only reason I'm trying to understand it is I read an article in the Salt Lake Tribune that talked about a road that was no longer being taken care of by anybody, and the citizens literally had to stop driving down their own road because they couldn't go in it. Garbage wouldn't go in it. Even the Postal Service said they're not going to do it. And there was a big conflict on who actually owned the road, and they were too small of a HOA, if you will, to be able to afford to fix it. And the big thing that the city used to say, hey, we don't have to do anything, is that on one of those lots, it had the attachment to the deed to the property line going out that far. Is that something that makes sense throughout the entire city
to be able to have all of that? Because I know we, in my mind, I think of one specific little situation, just one small little private road, but I don't think we have any thing that stops the length of road or the amount of road per acre or any of those kind of things. So if let's say a PUD decided to come in and they had 20 some odd acres to fill, they could do all of that private road and may or may not be able to handle the maintenance, repair, and everything with it. And I just want to make sure that the citizens are going to be protected on situations like that. So I think that's something we need to look at when we start looking at the size and how capable it is. Because CCRs are fine, but there also should be a fund that, immediately starts, plowing and stuff, I would assume.
I don't know that the practical problem you're mentioning goes away per se with this. There's no guarantee that the reserves will be set aside and that the HOA will care for its organization properly. It will memorialize the fact that they're responsible. It'll be recorded with the deed and can't be changed in that way unless all of the residents were to change it and the city were to accept that change. So I think the only real protection to the city is that ability to say no at a future point in time. I will warn you, those decisions are hard to say no to when the time comes. As Brandon mentioned, there's a little bit of a protection in the fact that we require the roads to be constructed according to the city standards, but you're touching on a real practical problem that does in fact exist.
That's one of the purposes of limiting to 4 units on residential property that's not, that's our single family property. Another thing to point out on the PUD portion, that specifically in that denotes to follow the specifications of the underlying zone.
Right.
So if you're doing a PUD that has a mix of R7 and RM, then on the underlying zone, they can do a private road on the R7 portion. However, on the RM portion, they would only be able to feed 4 units. And so then it precludes a larger development. And so it kind of limits that generalized impact that could be, because typically these R7 developments are limited to a smaller pocket of acreage, and the length of road isn't enormous, and therefore would present a larger problem for an HOA.
That's kind of as an assumption that this is normally, we don't have anything to limit that.
Other than the provisions within each zone.
Yeah. And well, we don't have anything in any of the zones that limit length of road, size of road, number of things that can be developed within it other than the density, right?
Correct, but within, for example, R7 can't be larger than a 10-acre area, right? So that does limit that per se. But yes, there is no specific length other than fire code requiring different accesses. Another thing to consider is that it has to correlate with our transportation plan. So if our transportation plan denotes that there needs to be a major route or a connecting route within that subdivision, then that would not be able to be a private road. It would have to be a public road at that point.
And when you say transportation plan, that's what it was saying in here is the comprehensive plan a couple times?
Yeah, the general plan.
Okay, so it is the general plan and the transportation plan. That's it. Okay, sorry, still just.
You're great. I love the question.
Well, then on that, because you just said we don't have anything on length, we did have something on length, didn't we, before that stated the length that the private road could be within certain areas? I thought it was one of those things that was marked out.
I would have to double check on what
most of the time that length is going to be prohibited by our transportation plan, because anyone who has a piece of property that's larger than a couple acres, it probably is going to run into one of those roads. And that's the way I felt similarly with this on the R7. As you look at our general plan, unless our general plan drastically changes, we only have a few spots that can even go, and they're really small pieces of property. So I don't see these being as long roads anywhere.
Okay.
I don't see how that could be without running into a crossroad. If you look on the kind of the northwest side, those are bigger properties and they run into major collectors, and and all sorts of different roads on our transportation plan.
And like you said, we're basically saying that this is the standards that we have for the city roads.
Yeah.
Is that same length, width, all of those kind of things. So it really should just, okay, I think I'm understanding.
Just a quick thought, piggybacking off of Joel. Do we need to use the actual terms vehicle transportation map as a general plan instead of comprehensive plan if there's a question about what we're talking about?
Because I'm not.
Well, no, it's
No,
a good point.
It is
I
a good
mean,
point. I want to double check
comprehensive
what we
plan
wrote in
could be
the
a number of
ordinance.
different things.
So if you look on page
Oh,
149,
it needs to say transportation.
look on page 149 of our packet, 11-4-4C, down to number 3. Private rights of way shall not be permitted for any portion of road that is contained on the South Weber City Transportation map.
Oh.
Does that cover it?
So
There you go,
maybe we
Angie.
just need to, there is another part where it says comprehensive plan, so maybe we just need to
To make
use
them
the same terminology in
consistent,
both
yeah.
places.
I believe that might be in a portion that we're striking, but I will double check on that.
A quick search of the document for the word comprehensive, it shows up on page 143 of the packet.
That would be in our red lines. wouldn't it?
No, that's under the PUD section.
It's current code references to private roads. It shows that 10.7I PUD, it has the word comprehensive. there
Comprehensive
on line
plan.
2. So that is a current code reference, right? So it currently says comprehensive plan.
It's also on page 148. It looks like under PUD again.
Again, that's the same reference, I think, right? That
And then
10.7I.
page
Because it's-
154 under streets.
Yeah, those are,
Yeah, but that's current. If you go to the updated one, I don't see it in there.
I don't recall leaving that in
Okay.
the updated ordinance, but.
Thank you.
It's a good catch. Though.
Mhm.
Yeah, on 10.7I-4, that's where we had updated the PUD section and we struck, we basically simplified that section and referenced that, private streets is now just one sentence within that. And so it says private streets shall meet the provisions of underlying zones. That's all we. Oh, there is on the comprehensive plan. That was something that was left over. We can change that.
change that word.
Do we need to
To
make that
general
part of a
plan.
motion to have it changed to
Yeah, we
to
would have to-
transportation
Yeah,
map?
as an amendment
Okay.
to
Yeah.
the drafted ordinance.
Thank you.
And just before you go any further, just so I know, we have 2 ordinances here that are carbon copies. The first one simply just states the zones that they're in, and the second one does not, correct?
Correct. The first one had the zones as a note. The second one had those stripped to become the official ordinance. So the second one is what is going to be signed by the mayor or with amendments signed by the mayor. The first one was for the purpose of the packet, because I don't think any one of us know what 10-5P or 10-5H or 10-5, those were very confusing. And so
So,
we had put those.
but this private road, these sections will just be under those correlating zones, is that correct?
Correct, yes. Mhm. So it's just adding another provision within each of those zones. To be specific about what those zones would be holding.
That was a hope to make it clear for anybody looking under that zone, that it would identify in that zone language what it was for private rights of way within that zone. So just try to be clear in the code.
For future reference, just because of I'm not as bright as everybody else on here, I threw it into Excel and just put a quick, which ones it does qualify and doesn't. So especially on something this large, it was easier to just have a quick visual representation of where each one of these would do. So
If you remember in December, there was the little matrix and it showed where it was allowed and
I
where it
wasn't here in
wasn't.
December.
Yeah.
Sure.
Would this
what
be
en-
something that's
but what
beneficial
ended up
to put
happening- What
in-
ended up happening is because it was allowed in every zone, it didn't need a matrix saying it's
Right.
allowed or not allowed. It just needed within the zone language an expression of what was allowed there. So a matrix is great for one large look. In this case, it was specific to each zone, and that's where somebody would be looking. So rather than add language there that says, turn to another page, it was just add 2 sentences in that spot. That was the thinking.
Okay.
But it could be done differently
Mhm.
if you want.
Mhm.
Like I said, I'm just trying to catch up with everyone else, so.
You're just fine.
So I guess the big question is, how does everybody feel about putting a 26-foot street in an R7?
So that was yeah, I have one of those other slides. If we
And I
go
mean,
forward a little
the
bit.
reason I bring that up is that would be one of the changes I would like to make is that in R7, it's option A, not option A and B. Because if you correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, didn't we say that currently the newer townhouses to the west, Freedom Landing is a 26-foot road?
We actually double checked that and it's 24. So it is 2 feet smaller than,
Freedom Landing is 2 feet smaller than what you're proposing.
correct.
Yes, and my last slide is basically saying that we talked about, there was a talk about having a 30-foot, changing that to 30 feet. That's not a substantial change from the 32-foot street, and so we felt that if the council wished to have a larger street, then perhaps we just went to the 32-foot.
And that was going to be my suggestion, is just to, because 30 was what I was thinking, but I'm okay with this going to this 32, so it's the same standard all the way across, and then that way it gives them room for the problems we've had with garbage cans and family visiting and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if you allowed on-street parking. I think that's another question, but in an R7, but still I would prefer this to see option A. I don't know how the rest of the council feels about that.
So just to clarify, so you're saying that section or option B, which is the 32-foot right of way, doesn't have room for parking or pedestrian or
Well, I mean,
biking or.
2 cars can go down it, but
Yeah, they can, but
you throw your garbage cans out there, like, so that's the experience we've talked about down at Freedom Landing. They put their garbage cans out there and 2 cars can't pass.
yeah,
2 cars can't pass without the garbage cans.
especially 2 trucks. I'm just.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So that's why I like the larger right of way better. It's not a lot. It's about 6, 8 feet.
Yeah.
So
I have a lot of thoughts on this, naturally.
go for it.
But I do agree with Blair on the wider. I just really feel that 26 is way too narrow, and I even feel 32 is quite narrow, especially if we allow on-street parking there. I would definitely like to see that go higher and would like to hear from my council members on this. But I do have a couple of other things I would like to run by, if that's okay. Quick question on RM, RLM, and RL, we have the options of C, B, and A, correct?
Correct.
Who gets to decide that?
The person putting in the road.
Okay.
We would review it with them, but it would be something that if they wanted to do a 22-foot right of way, then we would allow.
I think we should, if that's what the council favors, then it should be, because it's unclear at this point. If let's say the planning commission does not favor C and they want them to do B, there is nothing in there that says who gets to decide that, who gets to change it, anything in that. So I feel like we might be running into a problem there.
One thing we did want to avoid, we've talked about it, and you can put it in the code if you'd like. It was just creating negotiation points.
Mhm.
And so if you would like to have a negotiation point where they can talk about what they would be allowed and what they would not be allowed, or have it be upon the judgment of the planning commission or the city council, we can definitely do that. But that was just one thing that we really limited the negotiations, because there isn't necessarily an appetite for a lot of negotiations and development. We'd rather just apply the code.
So sorry.
No, I was just gonna, so having all 3 options in there gives us more negotiating power?
No,
Okay.
what I'm saying is that it will allow them to implement the code as they see. So if they wanted to do a 32-foot street, then there's provisions that say, okay, if you do that, then this is the standard that you have to follow. But if
So
they
that would giving the planning commission a legislative decision instead of administrative?
No,
it's still.
it would be a conversation at the development stage. If they come in and propose a 22-foot right of way, then we know what that cross section would look like. They come in and say, I want to do a 32-foot right of way, then we know what that cross section would look like and tell them the requirements of that cross section. but it would just allow them to implement that on their private property how they wish to see. What I think what Councilmember Albert is talking about is providing that's upon approval of the planning commission to use that cross-section.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I just favored option C for those zones simply because it's for 4 lots. I mean, these people really won't need anything wider. And I doubt that they would want anything wider for four homes only. But that's something to just consider. If we choose to go with all 3 options, I think there just needs to be a clearer direction as to who gets to determine that. Because currently it's just a question.
If you're willing to allow all 3, then they determine which one. It's like providing the
True, but
menu.
it would be like if all of us got together and a couple of us were gonna share a house, because we only have 4 houses. That would be really weird.
Can't we just all have our own house and only 4 of us are getting together?
No, we gotta do 4 lots.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Regardless, I just don't understand why we're living to decide
But if-
which right of way we pick.
But if it has A, B, or C, I think what Haley was saying is the planning commission or council
Mhm.
could impose the more expensive one or the harder one on there.
Or
if they-
could we? I mean,
I mean,
currently it doesn't say
no.
that we could do
No,
that.
Could you not?
You're
'Cause it-
allowing all 3.
Then you're just allowing them. You
If
can't tell
get
them
to
they
pick,
can't.
You're
okay.
saying you can pick one of
Then I'm
these
okay with that.
cross-sections, but you have to pick one
As long
of
as we
these.
can't put a bigger burden just because we want to.
You're essentially
this-
saying for those zones where it says C, B, and A, you're allowing any of those 3 cross-sections. They just have to pick one and meet it.
Build to it.
Build
And
to
the,
that.
and the planning commission nor the city council can say otherwise. The developer chooses and that's what stays. That's,
Yes.
Yeah, I don't,
it
So
doesn't
if you
say
don't-
that here. It needs to, but that's something we need to decide who is making that call. Because if they have options,
Well, but they're
currently
saying-
we don't
they're
have
saying
anything.
Yeah,
that
so
it's automatically the person who's building this option because it's in the code.
Well, it's
Correct.
not, so that's what I'm trying to say is we have these options, but it's not saying who is the deciding factor. Staff is recommending
Well,
it be the developer,
No, they're
correct?
saying
No,
if
it's
it's in the
saying shall be
code,
permitted.
It shall be permitted. Okay,
it's not unlike you deciding in your house to
Gotcha.
provide 6 parking spaces when you only really needed 2.
right.
Does that make sense?
but
so that really takes away the ability then of the planning
Yes.
commission or city council to be able to say, no, in this subdivision for the citizens, I don't think it would be good to do a 22, foot road there. We need it to be up to a certain city standard.
Yeah, so now is the decision-making moment for council to say, we're willing to allow that standard of road. If you don't want it to be that small, or you don't want option C to be allowed, then strike that and just allow B or A. If you only want to allow one of the cross sections in different zones, then you select which cross section you're willing to allow. And you're giving that option to the developer. If you
Okay.
only want one option, you just pick one. If you're willing to allow others and have flexibility for the developer to look and say what's best for the project, but still has some flexibility and options, that's why you would provide A, B, or C.
But they would still be able to come, even if we said A in this only, they would still be able to come to the city council or the planning commission and ask for some type of exemption or ask for, because I've seen them in the past where, they're able to make changes against code and stuff.
Oh,
So,
yeah, you can
I mean, it
always
still
do
gives
that.
the option available if they come in with an incredible development that, yeah, we could work with them on that. But if we leave it in code right now, the way it's written, it would be open that they could just decide it and we're out of the picture. So, okay.
Yeah, that's we do that with a lot of other portions of the code, like our permitted uses for zones, correct? Like we're okay with whatever you build as long as they're permitted use, and that's a similar situation.
Which is why that's so critical, because once we put it as this is permitted, that's it, we're out of the picture altogether. So
Absolutely.
we really have to,
So we just need to decide as a council if that's something we favor or not. If we want the ability to weigh in on that decision, or if we want to just give them that right to choose. And
Yeah.
that is what it is.
I would highly recommend that you just make the decision now
Yeah.
and not make that a project dependent conversation.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah, I agree. And to put just one more consideration for you with that, the options available to your permitted use, a prohibited use, or a conditional use. If you were to make it so that there would be some exercise of judgment either by the council or by the planning commission, it would be a conditional use, and you'd be limited to those conditional use criteria that are already in. statute, you couldn't, or in code rather, you couldn't layer onto it additional criteria. I don't know of any of those conditional use criteria that would really help you make that kind of a decision. And so I think the recommended option, at least what I would recommend you do, is consider this, that you're making a decision as to a permitted use. And as Councilmember Dills said, once it's permitted, it's permitted. So be sure that the decision you make is something you're comfortable with.
Yeah, so you just need to select which cross sections you're comfortable with in which zones. And so if you look over what's in there, which zone, do you want to allow any of those, or do you want to allow only one or two?
But if you're willing to go to the small ones, say for the 4 lots, do you care if they opt to go to the bigger ones? You shouldn't. I mean, so if you're willing to go to C in them, you should also let them go to A or B, because they may want to make a nicer road
Good point.
in their subdivision. So it doesn't hurt, I don't think, to put the bigger roads if you're willing to go down to the C, is what I was trying to say
Yeah.
before.
I agree.
That's what I agree with too. If I mean, I'm totally fine with them going C. B and A is just a bonus to the city.
Yeah,
but
it is.
I don't think very many in those residential zones would be requesting to make a bigger road. Just real quick on, and I'm sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth between the different ordinances we have here. So hopefully I'm reading this correctly. Page 146 on the private right of rights for R7. 2A, it says the private rights of way must be expanded to include sidewalks where required. Earlier we had seen that it's number 2, that we need to have sidewalks on the front facade. So basically sidewalks on both sides of the street. Do we need 2A?
The thinking behind that is that with the provision in R7, the front facade of the building, if you did an alley loading townhome project, where that's not the front facade, that's the rear entrance, and a front facade is on the other side, then a sidewalk would have to be provided on the front facade of the building to connect to a pedestrian right of way.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if we didn't have the provision of 2A, then it wouldn't.
So you're saying if my house faces that way, I have to have a sidewalk, and across the street is somebody else's backyard, they would still need to have the sidewalk with 2A.
Yeah, they would have to have the sidewalk on their front of their house rather than on the rear of their house.
Okay.
So that provision just eliminates the confusion of, do I need to have it on the right of way, or can I have that sidewalk somewhere else? So it's maybe a little bit redundancy, but we wanted to build in to make sure that we were clear on the interpretation of that.
Okay. Sorry, excuse me. Just a quick couple other things that I just think the council needs to take into consideration. One thing that I would like to see, where I understand that we can't guarantee services like mail or garbage. In lieu of that, can we add to either a development agreement or a sketch plan review? If you're going to utilize a private road, you need to have proof of services of that nature, garbage or mail, much like we have secondary water promises, same thing, so that we know that the subdivision will be getting those services.
So looking at our development process to add that.
Yeah, if we're going to put it on the
check list
developer
item.
to make sure that he offers these services, then let's put it on the developer to make sure he offers these services. I'm sorry, guys. And then, do we have a driveway ordinance as far as the length of driveway outside of our setbacks? So if a development does not need to hit here to certain setbacks, is there a requirement for how long their driveway must be? I couldn't find anything.
I don't believe there is.
So that's just something for the council to consider, because there are developments there, and the few that I've been looking at, where the driveways are 9 feet.
So I sent Haley a screenshot of my brother's development in Utah County, and it's 9 feet from the sidewalk, or excuse me, from the curb where the sidewalk starts to their garage door. So you can't park a car in it, and it's not allowed. So if that is something that isn't specified, there has to be a length, then that creates a huge parking problem.
they wouldn't be allowed to count it as a parking
Well,
space, though.
the setbacks of the underlying zones still remain in force.
Except for a particular property where there is no setbacks. And without the provision of a certain length of a driveway, they don't have to do that setback length, correct?
Yeah, I think in our review of R7, we've experienced that, right? Where a single development occupies one lot with multiple main buildings. Yeah, if that's a concern, we can definitely put that on the.
It's
on
a
the code update.
concern. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we
just
can
one
definitely
thing,
look at-
Typically, the home setback is what dictates length
Mhm.
of driveway, but in
Exactly.
an R7, it's not as clear.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
not necessarily the private right of way that would dictate that, but it is something related to.
Yeah,
It's
we
the type, it's the type of R7 that allows
Exactly.
that no lot
If,
line.
if we have a 0 point setback, then we have a problem where we have no way to prevent 9 foot, 8 foot driveways, which won't count for parking. So
I
I think that's
totally
something that we
agree.
need to look into.
And we should definitely
Yeah.
get that addressed.
Yeah,
I gotta be honest, I feel like not allowing private streets in the R7 zone at all.
So my thought, just looking at our previous PUD private road was 41 feet. So if we go to option A, we're dropping down to 32 feet of pavement. That's the largest of our options. So we're losing 9, right? Thank you. 9 feet of road that we originally required in our PUD previously. I think-
I would amend that, though. The PUD allows it down to the 26.
yeah.
With this proposal.
No, with our current setup.
So,
The 41 feet is the total right of way.
oh, total right away. Okay,
And so that includes curb, gutter, sidewalk.
okay.
Um,
Thank you.
And so that, and I think it was a 5-foot sidewalk. in
I mean,
PUD.
Yeah, I don't recall.
We're only dealing with, and I'm going back to your comment, we're gonna deal with one, maybe two possible R7s that are not currently under proposal or whatever. And so you look at that, and if you take away a private drive, you now have a parking lot in the middle of a bunch of, it still doesn't change R7. You're now gonna have a parking lot instead of maybe some duplexes or twin homes or some different things that have been proposed on a couple of those pieces to the east side. They can't do that if they don't have a private drive. You're gonna end up with a parking lot in the middle or surrounding, and you're gonna have a little 15-foot entryway that meets city standards, and then a parking lot that goes into a townhouse development or something.
So I'm going to reference back to my brother's development where he lives.
Mhm.
It is like 6 homes. They're not townhomes, but they're only 6 feet apart. They all face one street that's 26 feet
29, I think it was.
of pavement, as best as I could measure, right, on Google Earth. And then they can't utilize that street at all. There's no overflow parking. Well, I should take that back. There are 4 parking spots every 3 streets for overflow. They can't park in their driveway. They can't park on the street that their house faces. And so anybody who comes to see them at all, if they have more than 2 cars, there's nowhere to park. So to your concern that there'd be a parking lot, I see that, but also people are going to have people over. We need to provide parking. So if we say, oh, it's okay, take it down to 26 feet, then we're really doing all of our future residents a disservice because they won't have anywhere
I
to
get
park.
that, but our current parking is what? Say it's
40.
a townhome, it's two stalls per
2
lot.
1/3.
So I
stalls
own a
per
townhome in St. George that has a parking lot like that. We get our 2 spots. They still can't have one guest come over without going over into a guest parking spot, and there's like 6 of them for the townhouses. And I bet you the guests that go there, it's a rental, but the guests get ticketed every week
For what?
for parking in someone else's spot. It's an HOA type thing, and they're getting fined and penalized, and you get dirty letters as an owner, but there's nowhere to park them because city ordinances only require parking for 2, usually it's 2 parking stalls per residence, and then so many extras. But you can go down to Freedom Landing again and see the extras we currently even require are not very many. and you run out of parking really fast if you can't park in a driveway or a garage, because the owners are parking in the parking lot.
Mhm.
They won't have a garage at all.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's think of it this way. We have two options. We have some options. We have some reasonings for this, right? One is if we don't have a private drive, then it's a city street and it's maintained by us. So having it private is a benefit to the city on that respect. On the other hand, we have residents who will be living in this area who will need the parking. So I think that I think there's a place for private streets in R7. I'm just not a fan of this 32 foot of pavement, especially 32 feet of pavement when you do allow on-street parking. I mean, that's just not a lot of room. I don't see how it's good for the residents to make their streets narrow. However, I also understand that, you know, our public right of way is 70 feet. We have 41 feet of pavement on our standard street. So what if we allow, what we really need to do here is if we favor a private right of way in an R7 zone, we need to make it smaller than our standard 70-foot road right of way, but we also need to make it big enough for our residents. So I mean, if we're 41 feet of pavement on our standards, I would,
Are you
30,
talking about
30.
current Publix?
yes.
Just
Am I understanding that right?
36
From
feet
curb to
of-
curb?
36 feet of pavement. From the
I'm
back
looking
of
at
curb to the back of curb is
41.
41.
Yeah, from curb to curb.
But you said.
Oh, a
you said-
pavement,
you
so
said
from
pavement.
36 to 36, okay. So can we make the width of the pavement similar to our standards and lower the amount of our sidewalks? Because we have pretty wide sidewalks at 6 feet. Can we drop those to 4 feet and perhaps 39 or 38 of pavement? I feel like that is allowing, because frankly, the fact of the matter is this is helping the developer not put in such a big road. This is helping the city by not having to maintain it. So we need to find a common ground here, but if we make it slightly smaller than our current, but not so small that it's impacting the residents, that's the number I think we need to find here.
I do have a question, and I think it's important to frame our conversation. We've heard a lot of concern about parking specifically. Is it then an issue with our parking code and not the private right-of-way code?
I think if we're gonna go with no parking on this street, which I really don't favor because they're gonna park there anyway, but if we're going to go with that, then we need to update. In cases where they're using a private right of way, we absolutely need to update our visitor parking requirements. I really feel that you're not servicing those future developments by.
So if I may, it sounds like you're uncomfortable in R7 allowing A and B.
Yeah.
So a simple change would be just to only allow A. Are you
Well, I don't really
comfortable
love
with-
A.
But also
A-
update parking standards and the required number of parking stalls.
So A is too narrow?
I feel, gosh, I got
Brandon, before she
32 feet is too narrow, yes.
So I have a question. If you look at our 70-foot right of way, I'm not seeing how wide the travel lane is on that diagram.
Two 12-foot travel lanes.
So they're 12 foot on 70-foot right of way, and they're 11 feet on a 50-foot right of way.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly where that line is. You could say still that it's got 12 foot and 6 feet of parking,
Mhm.
or 11 foot and 7 feet of parking. We feel that the 32 feet is wide enough to allow for on-street parking.
And the reason I kind of said agreed to 32 foot is 475, which is what do we consider more 475?
A collector.
36 feet of asphalt.
But weren't you just complaining the other day that when we
Yeah,
striped it and
I
they park on
agree,
a street,
but there
it's
is
too
room,
narrow?
there is room for them to park and
But
two
this would be-
semis to pass. I will
What
give
is
them
it?
that.
Sorry? So
36, 2.
So when there's parking on either side, it's pretty tight. We're losing 4 feet and
Yeah,
allowing parking.
but that's
both
on
sides.
a road that people are going, I mean, in a subdivision or especially in an R7 zone, they're not going 35, 40 miles an hour either.
Haley is.
They might.
I will say if we do expand the road to 36 feet on a private right of way, then there's no point in doing a private right of way because the developer will just say, then I don't have to develop or maintain.
And
the
they don't
street,
want to
so here you
maintain
go.
it.
And I'll just do a public road.
That's.
So then
that's
what's the
crux of it.
benefit to the residents? I'm trying to, I think Haley kind of said that pretty well, is we're balancing this benefit to the city and benefit to the residents. Because ultimately, if we're not providing enough parking and in R7, their parking will be a problem. Like it's an issue. Anywhere I've seen in R7, there's an issue with parking. So trying to manage that.
I don't disagree that we should take a look at our parking code. But I feel like that's really the root of the concern, not necessarily whether or not to do a private road.
Private road, I'm okay with private road. The width of the road, I still don't like. I don't like that 32 feet of pavement.
So are you okay with 36 then?
36 is very much more comfortable to me. Very much more comfortable. Is that, I don't know if that's grammar.
We want Haley comfortable.
Well, and I did of course I did. I did way too much research online beforehand. And I found a couple of articles and stuff from the American Plan Association and one of the transport ones. And it actually shows, so like on a 35-foot width, that if you have parking on the side, that the travel lane itself, you're leaving only 2.8 feet for traffic to be able to move down. Where if you're on a 39-foot width, now you're 3.8 on that same situation. So I think that when we're looking at, and I can send you guys the stuff on it, but basically all they did was just kind of take the measurements and the measurement of the car and then deciding whether we wanted parking or not on a road. And I think that as we talk about this, I like what Angie was saying, is that I don't think it's a parking issue as much as it is, what is the overall strategy for what citizens deserve as taxpayers? Because private road, they still pay the taxes. Should they be, is parking something that is beneficial? And if it is, why would we ever take that away from residents? So I think so I don't necessarily think that it is a parking code issue where we need to look at that, whether they're able to park on it at night or those, during the winter. I think it's more, this is what the citizens deserve. Do they deserve just a little bit of, macadam or asphalt going down and then, that's it? Or is it long enough so that they can park cars, have visitors, have Thanksgiving, have Christmas, and have people come over and still give enough room for traffic to be able to flow?
I think it's important on private roads to note that they're in developments that a resident will choose to live in.
Well,
And
but
so that they understand.
that's like saying that they deserve to live in a slum. And I don't mean to go that drastic, but just because they do choose it, there are reasons that they may have to choose it. And a lot of that could be funding, that could be, financial. But whatever the reason, do our citizens, any citizen, deserve a sidewalk, deserve a place to park? And I think that's the overall reaching, because like we said, this handles all of the different zones that are out there. And some are going to be very small examples that are only going to be 2 or 3 places, that are able to do that. But at the same time, they're still a citizen. And 10 years from now, when they look back and they go, why didn't we get a parking spot? This is ridiculous. And I don't know if that's the case, but I think we have to look at that overall picture, 30,000 foot. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I clarify. I totally agree that on-street parking should be allowed. When I talk about updating our parking code, I'm talking about the number of stalls required per unit.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that is something that still seems like it should and could be revisited.
Currently,
That makes
it's
sense.
2 1/3 parking stalls per unit in a multifamily development.
So I have a suggestion just to throw out and see what you guys think. Let's look at option A right now. It's a 50-foot road right away. What if we took it down from the 6-foot standard on the sidewalks to just 4-foot standard or 3-foot standard and put that extra width into the pavement width?
I don't think it's a good idea to have sidewalk adjacent to the curb where traffic is and only give them a small area to walk.
But we have a lot of sidewalks in the city that are only 4 feet currently. I mean, up until just a few years ago, 4 feet was our standard.
That's true. Current ADA standards would require a 5 foot. And
Okay.
unless you can go 4 foot, but then I think it's every 200 feet or something, you have to have a 5 foot width for them to be able to turn around.
Okay,
I think you're just safest if you go at least 5 feet.
okay,
I guess that's my feeling is that the citizens deserve to have a designated place for them to walk that's safe. So I'm much more in favor of having a larger sidewalk.
okay.
So it's staff's opinion that if we tell a developer that we want a 36-foot wide pavement, that they will say, forget it, I'd rather have a 70-foot right of way I can dedicate to you.
Yes, yeah, because there's no long-term financial obligation that they have to sign up for where they do if it's a private road.
And I think
Help me understand
But if
that.
they do a PUD, don't they have,
PUD requires a minimum amount
one
of
of-
acres, but it would be at this C.
okay.
Well, it would be according to the zone that it's in, which if it's R7, which it probably would be, it'd be C or B.
one of the, and Blair had talked about this earlier, one of the stated benefits to the city and admittedly to the developer on a private right of way would to be allow for a larger flexibility of use of somebody's land, correct? So for an example, if a private right of way to a parcel that would have benefited from a private right of way to put townhomes on it, now is unable to put that because that is prohibited there, they wouldn't necessarily be down any units. They would just find a different way to apply the code to get their unit development. So that could be garden style apartments versus a townhome application. So that was it was just allowed for, and it allows for, with a single family development, you to put a variety of housing sizes and housing styles on your own personal property. So it was just that's one benefit of private roads, is that it allows for some flexibility of uses to get better development projects versus the standard, which is great, but then it would be maintained by the city and limits flexibility of land use.
But to get a better development project, we have to lessen the benefit of the regular road, as in parking.
And as for the citizens who
Yeah.
will live there.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is an important principle to land on for a second and dwell on. I think sometimes there's a misconception, perhaps, that something good for the developer is bad for the city. And that's not always the case. Or
Yeah.
something that's good for the developer is bad for the future resident. And I don't think that's always the case. And I think what Trevor is explaining is that there are times where providing options for a developer allows for a better product that is better for the citizens. Not saying that this case specifically, we have to say, a wider road is the only way that we benefit citizens. Because one way to think of it is, if we force somebody into doing a public road instead of a private road, or we make it so there's a very negligible difference between those two, then the larger collective we as a public and as a city ends up having a financial burden there, ends up having a maintenance burden there, ends up having a financial burden that the collective citizens have to take on. And that becomes less of a benefit even to those residents that might live there. Just it's a different lens. It's a different way to look at that. Maybe parking is better, but maybe now they're spending more money because now the city has to take on that maintenance of that road and the snow plowing and the street sweeping and the surfacing.
But that's more of an argument or an issue that would be applied to the proper amount of taxing, because we do deserve, every citizen deserves a minimum amount of services. I mean, and, you know, saying the same thing is that as, you know, as we get more citizens and well, now we're going to have, you know, more fire department, you know, well, yeah, we're going to. And I think roads are, you know, always a cost on that, but I would assume that, and that's why I was trying to put it, if we have an overall strategy that says, no, we believe that this is one that a citizen or resident deserves to have these bare minimums, then they should, and that shouldn't switch back and forth regardless of whether the project is, you know, large or going to give us something. I really wasn't thinking on the developer on that side. I was really just thinking on the equality throughout all citizens. But yeah, I do
Well, I
understand
think a
what you're saying.
perspective to keep in place too is there's always a wash. I really think it's 50-50 because on the one hand, while you may have a larger road that the city takes care of, you know, there's an equal amount of citizens that are in Sandalwood that currently don't have enough parking and they're parked on 1550 in the winter. And there's the residents that pass them that are frustrated that they get a pass because they live in a smaller development. And now those residents are gonna, you know, they're pushing for us to push enforcement harder. So while you may not, I don't know why this happens every time I talk, but while you may not have, you know, you're going to have the increased taxes of taking care of the road, you're also going to have citizens complaining about a situation you can't take care of. So I think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of these situations, it's a wash. But I do have a question real quick for Brandon Jones. Help me understand why jumping from, why can't I remember this number? A 32-foot of pavement to 36. Why is 4 feet enough for them to throw their hands up in the air and say, all right, fine, I'll just do the 70?
I mean, I guess because it's the same width. Maybe I'm not understanding your question.
Well, it'd be a 50-foot road, a 50-foot
Right.
row right of way.
Okay, so help me understand. You want 36 feet of pavement, then you add 5
Well,
feet
no, I'm
for
just
curb.
putting to your comment of what Angie asked you, if we jump them to 36, that because our local standard is, well, it's not 41.
So
What did
go
you say
to
it was?
36, but allow for the sidewalks to be adjacent to the curb and go to a 54-foot right of way?
Maybe the reason I think you start getting away from having to have the HOAs, you start having to get away from all sorts of different things. As a developer, you step away from the project, correct? Now
Right.
if you're gonna develop a bunch of individual townhomes that can be sold separately on deeds and titles, now you no longer have an HOA required because you don't have a private street, you don't have to have common areas, you don't have to have all that other stuff. They just run private or public roads down through it and sell them and walk away. And then you get back to Joe's comment, yes, they'll be treated equally, but maybe some of those developments want an HOA or something. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying that I think your return on just widening that road a little bit and then you walk away, you don't have to set up corporations that deal with the
We're
HOA.
not talking about a little bit. We're talking about a lot. I mean, from a 50 right away to a 70?
Yeah, but that developer also maintains that HOA until the last units, well, the majority of those units are sold. It encumbers that company for quite some time. And so they're gonna look at it, hey, we're washing our hands, we're getting out of here. And in my mind, that's the give and take of where somewhere there's a line that the developer or the property owner is gonna say, just that extra little bit isn't. I don't know what that magic number is. I don't, because I don't do that for a living, but that is gonna be how they're gonna consider it. There is a line there that they're gonna say, a private street versus a public street is now, I might as well just build a public street and just be done with it.
So hearing that, if someone applied yesterday to have a private street in R7, what is their expectation of a right of way? Is that, there's none, we don't have any consistent code. So they could pull a number out of the air and say, this is what I want my private road to be?
Currently, in current code, if they just did straight R7 with no PUD, they would not be allowed a private right of way.
But if they do a PUD,
If they do a PUD, then there is
41 feet.
Yeah, there's a 41-foot right of way.
Right of way, not asphalt, right?
That's a
Right of way.
That's a 26-foot street with the additional. And so,
I see the point of needing to update private roads. I do. And I see the benefit private roads would be to the city. I'm just not really convinced that these private roads are a benefit to the residents living there. It's just so narrow. I just don't know what that number is. And
I think it kind of gets back to what Brandon's saying about, we need to separate these, the parking issue, the road width issue, and the other thing, because if our parking said you have to have 4 parking spots for every unit, then would we have the issue?
pause 1 second, real quick. Just a question for somebody. When we did the loft, there was a standard of how much parking we could require. Is that going to be an issue? I mean, can we choose how much we think it would be, or are we held to a certain national standard of how much we could actually do?
We could choose, right now, our code states 2 1/3 if per unit in a multifamily project. So, so if you have 30 units, then you would, oh shoot, I should not.
But what if we wanted to jump it
But
up
you
to
know what
4?
I'm saying. If you have
Don't do
32,
it.
then Dave's gonna take it over from here. But anyway.
What I'm
you have
asking is, what
spaces
if we wanted to bump it up to 4? Could
Thank
we do that based on our own subjectivity, or are we held to national standards saying that, no, you can't do that many, that's too much?
We can change that. We can't change that tonight because that is not part of this
I understand
ordinance.
that, but I wanted to
we
know,
can
could
come
we,
back with that.
okay.
Mhm.
That does help. I do feel with garbage cans out and being able to pass each other, I still have a concern. In some of these cases, you're gonna back out and go into your neighbor's driveway, which heaven forbid they have a really short driveway, you're gonna hit their car. But it does help to know that they have parking.
So I was just going to say, what Joel was explaining, I was looking at his diagram here, how, because I think Blair was a little confused with what he's saying. It showed a parked car. And then it
An
said,
average car is 5 foot 9 inches, just so you know.
Can we just round up? Can we
no,
not
it
use
was just
decimal
saying
form?
like how wide the street would be and what the space is between the car parks.
Exactly.
It would be like between 1 foot and 2.5 feet is what it was.
I don't understand what you're saying.
My car's parked here
Mhm.
along the curb.
On the side of the road.
Yes,
I will
this is the travel
say,
lane.
there
And
are
there's
studies.
Hold on, Trevor.
1 to
okay.
2 feet between.
Okay, the parked
This
car
car.
and your car traveling
Yeah.
down the road. Okay.
So theoretically, a garbage can could allow more space,
Well,
allow space to travel.
Not as helpful, thank you.
I will say there are studies with widths of roads, and that does decrease the speed of traffic as the road decreases in width. So that is something to consider. It does actually increase some safety aspects on that because people are traveling slower in those residential areas. Typically, they're smaller, they're more compact, but
that's why Brandon painted lines.
Well, and the truth is.
It's
that-
true.
Yeah, I was reading on that. It started in, I believe, 2007, and they've done it sequentially. And it does show that the smaller area, so actually by having cars, vehicles parked on the side, it actually reduces the speed that people will go through because the wide road is similar to the highway and they're just ready to fly down it 2100 east. But if it's narrow because there's car parked, their brain immediately slows it down. And so, yeah, there is safety to it and it will slow it down, but the open view over the road where you just have curb and there's nothing out there doesn't necessarily slow it down as much as having vehicles parked on it. And yeah, y'all can look that up so you don't think I'm just making stuff up. But yeah, I just barely read that about.
Well, it
an
makes
hour
sense.
before
I
came
slowed down
here.
on 475 now because there's cars parked on the street
Yeah.
and there's lines.
Yeah.
So just a supplementary.
She really doesn't, you guys.
It's true. I always go the speed limit or slower,
Yeah.
always.
Just a kind of a supplementary comment here. I think this is actually a really exciting conversation, and to pull out just for a second out of the weeds. And I think we've identified that legislating and making a policy decision and a city code is not done in a vacuum, and codes relate to each other. And it's not just make one decision, that's it, leave it alone. We've already identified there are other code sections that could apply and could help with a comprehensive, going back to that word that is not the transportation plan, but a comprehensive view of the solution rather than just one. And so if we think of it in terms of what are the layers we're going to paint on this canvas, maybe the private road and the width is one of those, and we make that decision tonight and identify there are other layers of canvas we need to look at, and one of those is parking. one of those is the setbacks in R7, you know, those other things that have been identified that.
May I
become-
ask a question to that?
Yeah.
Let's just pretend that we approve this to some degree tonight. And then we choose to come back and update our parking, as we will need to do to put it on the agenda. At what point, does certain developments already in the process, are they held to whatever we choose on our updated parking in another month or two, or will they just go straight with what it is currently?
So a developer is entitled to the zoning code in place when they apply their application.
Okay.
So we have a current project with an application that's in process that is not entitled to this parking code as it is being discussed.
Right-of-way code.
Right-of-way code.
Sorry, yes, the right-of-way code.
But they are entitled to the parking code as
They're
it is
entitled
currently
to the
written.
Parking as it is current.
So long story short, if we pass this with the exact same numbers that this developer put on their development plan, we won't be able to change parking. They're entitled to the parking that they applied for at the time.
Yes, and that is correct. One thing to note with that development, no, we're not talking about that. They are over parked for what they are required to. Each unit has four parking spaces. So
They are over parked.
More.
they have more parking than is required by law.
And the buildings are set back 20 feet,
The buildings are what?
set back 20 feet
From the road?
from
So
the
there's
right
a
of way.
20-foot driveway, which provides 2 additional parking spaces.
Is
to
these,
what is in the,
oh, so the parking is including the driveway?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, but visitor parking,
They have visitor parking as well.
but that meets just our current code, correct?
They overpark.
They exceed.
They
the
have
current code.
far more parking than is required by.
Over parked. I like this over parked word. I think we
That's
should,
better than really good.
better than
So
really good.
they currently have 4 parking spaces per unit for the unit.
In
and
the
then they have
residential portion.
additional in the residential portion, and then have additional visitor parking on top of that. So they have a vast amount, but we're not talking about that development tonight. So
Thank you for that perspective.
I have to say, this discussion is exciting. Isn't this fun? Okay, I'm
Holy
actually
cow.
feeling a lot better about 50-foot right-of-way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Actually, thanks, Joel. It's his visual.
It's
So,
it's
50
almost
foot-
10 feet wider than what our current is. It's 9 feet.
50-foot right away with on-street parking allowed? No?
As shown in section A.
So are you talking about that for everywhere and there's no option C?
I'm speaking
Like
to
R7.
R7.
R7?
So we
only?
Yeah,
would take
but
out
in
the
the other
B
zones-
option of R7 and just go with A.
That's, yes.
So moved.
Boom.
Hold on, no. No,
Oh,
no, we have amendments to this that have to be tied to other parts of our code, so please don't forget those.
Okay, all right, okay.
I wrote a nice little paper
So
for you to
can
help.
we back up just a second? The reason we brought up this right-of-way discussion is we've got a gap.
Yes.
So what is that specific gap that we need to close soon? And then do we continue the discussion with all this other aspect?
So how we have it drafted would close every gap, because then every zone addresses private right-of-ways and would have a provision of private right-of-ways that we can implement on any future developments. The gap currently is that private right-of-ways are permitted in PUDs. They actually require a total of an 80-foot, if you include their public utility easement in that, which is 20 feet on both sides. It's an 81-foot right-of-way total. So that's a larger thing than we even require for our things if you include that, but the size of the road is different. So it includes it. PUDs is where it's at, and we also allow it in some residential applications for 2 units. And it's very vague and it's really hard to interpret until because I've had to try to tell people how to do it and they're like, I don't get it. And so I am with you, but that's what we have to do. So as it's drafted, it covers all of those gaps that we can foresee. Now, could there be something that comes forward in 6 months and I say Why didn't we ever think of that? Yes, I'm not gonna say it's foolproof and bulletproof, but that, as Brandon and I and Jamie and Dave have reviewed it, we feel like this covers the gaps that are currently in our code. I don't see any need to go back and open this portion of the code necessarily, to amend anything in the future, but there are some attachments to this conversation that we would want to bring back.
I rescind my second.
I wasn't making a true motion.
Well, you did.
So, because you're gonna make it, because you've been writing down.
I
I
know.
didn't ask for one.
Wow, Rod. Mayor?
Oh, good on you. Way to keep him in line.
But if there is no further discussion, then I would ask that there be a motion.
Trevor, did you say you had something nicely written up for us?
There should be something in the packet that was with you.
Oh, you're not talking about after this discussion?
No, I do not have that.
All right,
Okay.
so we need to remember
To change
parking.
We're revising the reference of the comprehensive plan to be
to the
South Weaver
transportation map.
Thank
City
you.
Transportation Map.
A change to parking. Can we tie this with, no, we cannot.
So those other code sections, we would just,
What about driveways? It's just something to consider.
it's something that we would need to draft changes and bring.
Yeah,
to the board.
it doesn't need to be part of the motion. That's just
Right.
an instruction to staff.
So,
to work off.
Okay,
And I think we get the hint to do it rapidly.
rapidly. Rapido. El Rapido. Remember that? Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Quinn. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. Were you gonna make it?
I'm happy to make it. Okay, Mayor, I make a motion, we approve ordinance no. This is not 2021.
No,
It started in
Still-
2021.
it says the
It was a
ordinance is
continuation.
It's still
Oh.
the same ordinance.
Okay.
Yep.
Mayor, I do request to make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-14, amending titles 10 and 11 and updating Public Works standard drawings regarding private rights of way with the following amendments to change the language that says comprehensive plan to the South Weber City Transportation Map
And remove option B from R7.
and remove option B from R7.
Correct.
So it only includes option A. Michelle?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second
Can I think for just a second? Yes, okay.
Comprehensive plan to South Weber City Transportation Map. And removing option B in R7 zone. Halverson.
Halverson second. Okay, we have a second. We'll have a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Halverson.
it. Aye.
Whew, this is stressful. I feel like I had so many notes. Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. We have a unanimous. Thank you very much.
Good job, Trevor.
Man. Okay, moving right along here.
That was a short item, right?
We have resolution 22-01. Appoint mayor pro tem. City code provides for council to elect a mayor pro tem for sitting council to officiate when the mayor is unable or unavailable. In the past, this position has been appointed for a one-year term to allow more of the members to gain experience. So council, we need to decide among ourselves who you'd like to have be represented as the mayor pro tem. So.
So this past
any
year
nominations?
was Councilwoman Petty.
We're deciding this amongst ourselves. You're not
Yeah.
picking anybody?
No?
Did you read the packet?
Well, I did. I thought it might have been a typo. I kept
I will
waiting.
nominate Councilman Blair Halverson as the.
I've
mayor pro tem.
served, but
Not last year, right?
no.
No.
I'll second that.
Do we need to also discuss what our policy is going to be for this term, or does it matter?
Do we, like, you need length of term for 1 year?
Yeah.
I think we probably should, it doesn't really convey that. So is your, are you amending your motion
1 year.
to include 1 year of service?
Blair, would you rather?
Would be for 1 year.
Doesn't
somebody
matter,
else
doesn't
do the
matter to me.
option?
I'm willing to do it. So,
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second, so we'll do a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Dale.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess.
I can support.
No, no, I'm just kidding. It's an aye.
I guess.
Okay, motion carries. So,
Thank you for the nomination.
You're welcome. Thank you for the acceptance.
You bet.
okay, resolution 22-0, appointment to the Planning Commission. Planning Commissioner Wes Johnson's term will expire at the end of January 2022. Per City Code 10-3-1, the mayor shall appoint a replacement with the advice and consent of the city council. Mayor Westbrook spoke with potential applicants personally and publicly solicited applications in December of 2021. Upon review of the application received, Mayor Westbrook has selected Marty McFadden to present to the city council for appointment to the planning commission. Marty recently ran for city council, expressed his desire to serve the community, and has direct development process experience in his professional line of work. He has stated that he has a love for our community. I have a unique set of qualifications I have developed in my professional career as an infrastructure developer. That allows me to easily understand and appropriately respond to wide varieties of city development submissions that will come to the Planning Commission. I want to contribute to the sustainable and positive development of our city. I see a need for more effort with a stronger education in the municipal code and sustainable development within our planning commission, and I believe that I can fill that need. So it is my proposal that we approve Marty to the planning commission, and we have Marty here. And Marty, would you like to step up to the mic, and if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask him, feel free to do so. Or Marty, if you'd like to add any other thing to what I have already said, feel free. What?
I have exactly, oh.
Time's up.
3 minutes.
Mayor, I have just 2 questions. Oh, let's make it 3 questions for Mr. McFadden. Would you mind, I know you were part of the recent race, but would you mind just introducing yourself to the public a bit further for the record?
Sure. So you've obviously been introduced to me by my name, Marty McFadden. And just I guess a little bit about me. You know, my wife and 4 kids live in South Weber, and we've been here for about 2.5 years. In our married life, we've lived in small towns similar to South Weber, in different places. And I've had a career in managing commercial and residential buildings. I've spent most of my career managing condo associations, homeowners associations, commercial buildings, technical buildings. As of recently, in the past 2.5 years, I've been doing infrastructure development for both commercial and residential development. I'm not a builder. I've had you know, a very well-rounded experience in my life evaluating codes in many different cities, especially up here in the northern Utah area, and just understanding, what works, what doesn't work, from both a community's aspect as well as from a developer's aspect. And so I feel like I have, the qualifications necessary to evaluate proposals against our municipal code very impartially. And I feel like I'd be a great asset in being able to ask the right questions and understand, whether it's new concepts or old concepts coming to the table in our city. And anyway, yeah, it's my hope and desire to make our community the best it can be as well, and keep its identity and help make it a more sustainable place for everyone that lives here.
Thank you. So just a question for you, Marty. You and I have had discussions in the past, and they were a couple of years ago. And as a developer for the Stevens property, we had a few discussions about our general plan, and you felt that at the time that it was an unrealistic general plan, and it wasn't going to work without adding a great deal more households. And I was just wondering how you feel about that particular stance today.
Great question. In my experience and in my, every day I go to work, I get more and more exposure to, new facets and new infrastructure ideas and new inputs. And, I think one of the questions you haven't asked yet that, is related to what you did ask, that I'd like to answer is that, I have no desire to be a part of any development in town. That's I'm obviously I've applied for a position on the planning commission. I ran for office, for city council. I made it very clear, and I make it clear again that this is not me as a developer, being in this role. This is me being a citizen with a set of expert skills that I can use to benefit our community, and understanding, the possible opportunities that come to town. And so just wanted to kind of preface my answer that way, but also say that, I fully 100% support the general plan of our community. And I support any changes that are made to it that are proposed or approved by the city council. And that is my goal, to honor and uphold and maintain that general plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question on a less serious note, but still just as important. What would you say your spirit animal is?
Definitely the Wolverine.
Very elusive. Okay. Thank you for taking the time to be.
I'm impressed you knew how to answer it. I didn't.
Thank you for taking that time for me.
Oh, no.
I'm a backpacker. I love being out there in the wild, far away from people.
Thank you.
Any other questions or
I have
concerns?
I do, and we've had I don't know what level of it, but we've had a lot of public comment come in on this, and I kind of want to address it. And I want to be honest, I'm still struggling with what's the right decision, and I think most of this is going to be almost advice and questions, and a lot of people over the last couple of months, and I mean, we could actually even say the last couple of years is probably more accurate. We've had a lot of contention in the city. There's definitely been a divide in density and higher density and what goes on, in that, and what we should allow and shouldn't allow, and all kinds of very spirited debate. And the one concern that I originally had when I saw who all were applying for it was, do we want to put somebody that polarizing into office, into a position that's just going to cause more upset within the community? I don't think that should be a consideration. I've gone back and forth with it and really tried to weigh the thoughts behind it. And I think we've got a lot of way to go as a city to kind of bridge a lot of the gaps. And I know that's a concern for a lot of the people up here. And I don't think that is a reason to not allow somebody who I know is a good person. We've lived next to each other and been in the same ward and everything for a while. And so as I start looking at the whole idea, then the question that everybody keeps on coming up with is a developer, number one, going to be biased? And number two, is that the right person for the planning commission? And the question that I have for you is that as a developer or working with a development firm, you have a pride in what you do. I've talked with you. I know how, you really take doing a good job very seriously. And that's something that always has impressed me. Even when I've disagreed with you, you still felt you were making the right decision on these kind of things. Do you feel that a developer can work in the planning commission as a representative of the citizens and their vision through the general plan without being biased towards their own peers? Because I think it's human nature for us to be able to go, you know what, I understand what this guy's struggles are. And I was wondering, what do you feel on that? And please understand, I am not saying in any way that I think you are biased or that you are have any type of conflicts or anything. There's just a tendency for all of us to relate and empathize. How do you feel on that? And I'm just asking.
Great comments, great dialogue. I think the answer is yes. I think that I can. I think, when I take the oath, if I'm approved to take this role, it is my responsibility to uphold the city's code and general plan. Those who come to the table, I have some of the best expertise to understand what may be said or what is not being said and what is coming to the table. And so, whether I was of a different profession, let's say a lawyer or a farmer, I would have a bias still.
Yeah.
And so I think no matter who is standing here and taking on this role, I think what is most important is that, number one, they're going to fulfill that obligation correctly. And this is not a position where the citizens vote on this position. This is an appointment, and part of the reason that I understand that to happen is to evaluate as impartially the code as possible. Now, you guys get to be a lot more subjective, as a city council, and you can look at things a little bit more from a popularity vote, if you will. But I think on the planning commission, that needs to be an impartial position. It needs to be somebody who is educated and understands what they're trying to do. I think I have the chops of doing the heavy lifting that the planning commission is required to do prior to coming to the city council. Does that help?
It does. The one thing that I would address my fellow councilmen about is that with the, with being a developer or working with developing and building or having a business here in town, there's so many different things. There's always the assumption a lot of times of a conflict of interest. And I think personally that the city right now does not do a very good job of protecting public officials. I think that we've seen in the past where public officials have had accusations made and reputations attacked. And I'll be honest, I don't want to see you go through that. And I think that what I would recommend is as we consider on this, that we also consider making a few improvements to our conflict of interest, not for you as being worried, because I'm not worried that you're going to try to, you know, do any type of undue influence. That's what we have laws for. But at the same time, I think we also need to be able to take a few things and put them into code that maybe says, if a person is in this position, here's how they are protected. And I would just recommend that if we do confirm this, that we do also consider putting in the conflict of interest improvements that can help protect all of us, because there's absolutely no reason for some of the words that have been spoken. And I think everybody, I don't care what your job is. I've had other people here who have said that the job doesn't matter, and I agree 100% with that. Whether you're a developer, whether you're a builder, whether you run cable, it doesn't matter. If you're doing business with the city, you need to be protected. And so I just would hope that we'd keep that in mind. So
I appreciate you bringing that up. We're on the same wavelength there. I do feel, I'm sure the council has heard this from me if they have seen some emails, but I think of it a lot like our 2D leadership that a lot of entities utilize when working with the youth. It's not necessarily because, you know, you think that the person in that position is going to do something wrong, but it does offer that protection that nothing will happen, but also the question that anything ever did. And I think we do owe it to our, those who choose to serve in our community, the clear policy of when there is a conflict, what a conflict of interest means, because this has happened in the past where I have spoken about conflict of interest, and the question is, well, what is a conflict of interest? And so maybe something for another discussion, but I do appreciate you bringing that up, and it is something I think we should consider.
Well, I know the state does actually define a lot of that, but I do think that it would be one that we could utilize Jamie on, so that people can't just make bizarre accusations. If there's anything that anyone ever feels, or if there's ever a question of whether I should recuse myself, that we could utilize, you know, city council on it to say, yeah, you know, this is probably something you might want to look at, or no, you're completely fine. And then that may be all it takes for, you know, the trust to start being rebuilt. And I'm saying this knowing that this is a conversation that I failed to have with the mayor. And I blame myself because I'm new and I don't understand the process, and I don't know when I would have said it, but I do want you to know personally, it's not because I'm worried and concerned about you. I know exactly what kind of person you are, and this is more, I would have rather had it done before any nominee would have been put into place. And I do sincerely appreciate you applying for the Planning Commission and recognizing what the next couple of years could be like.
Sure. And, you know, on a daily basis, I rub shoulders with city staff in a dozen different communities.
Well, and I like the Honeyville development that you guys have been doing. Oh, that's actually very nice. Savannah Park or Savannah, anyways, yeah.
I don't know if that's, if those guys are me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Just a quick comment, and I appreciate your willingness to serve. And I, just from a perspective of, and I know a lot of people have watched every planning commission, but being part of there and having questions asked of me by a few of the planning commissioners and seeing their knowledge, I think Marty adds a good balance. There's been many times where there's comments made by the planning commissioners that they don't even understand what they're reading when they're reviewing plans and that. And I think it's a good balance to that. I mean, I've had to recuse myself on 2 or 3 occasions. All of us will come across that eventually. I have one this evening I have to recuse myself of voting for. So I don't see that as an issue. So I appreciate your willingness to serve, and I think we'll add a good balance to the planning commission, and I support that.
I agree with everything Blair said. He took the words out of my mouth. I do just want to add that I feel like planning commission is one of the most thankless jobs in the city. So I appreciate you being willing to do it, because it's tough. There can be, our packet this time was 218 pages, and you guys could get a proposal that's that long. So I really appreciate your willingness to serve. So thank you, Marty.
Yeah. So my added comments are, I again appreciate you being willing to serve, being willing to be scrutinized. Unfortunately, you're going to be, if you're approved, and I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, and I agree with Blair. I can see it be a valuable tool to have you on the planning commission. In my line of work, we have suppliers and customers, and suppliers go to work for customers, and they know all the ins and outs about what the suppliers do and how they try to get around things. And if you take that attitude and approach to protect our city by knowing the different things and the different things that try to go on, or to be able to explain and understand terminology that they may be using to try to fog things over, that is the benefit that you can bring to this position. And I hope you'll do so. I, support the mayor in your recommendation. It's up to you to now fulfill it and move forward.
Well said.
Any other comments? If not, then I'd ask for a motion.
I'll make the motion, Mayor, that we move to approve Resolution 2022-02, appointing Marty McFadden to the Planning Commission.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
Hey,
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations, Marty.
Thank you.
I have a
Marty.
question, just on, will he attend the planning commission for January or February?
He's got, I think he's got some training that he needs to go through before he can.
Yeah, every new planning commission member, before they can be a fully active member, needs to go through 4 hours of training required by the state.
But they can.
But he can do that from now until February.
I think code actually says that, February is the time that they do.
So, yeah, the Wes's term ends January 31st,
Right.
and Marty's will start February 1st.
So is he sworn in though tonight? So that
Yes.
he can hit the ground running?
So it's appropriate for him to attend our retreat as well, if he's sworn in.
Planning commission members
they
have not
don't?
been attending the retreat.
Didn't they come my
The
first
first
year?
year, but my first year, but not the second.
Okay.
Right.
I, Marty McFadden,
Do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Okay. Resolution 22-03, appointment members to various boards. South Weber holds positions on several boards within the greater community. Mayor Schoblum and Councilman Windsor has had positions which need to be reassigned. Councilman Dills will serve on the mosquito abatement. Mayor Westbrook will serve on the Wasatch Integrated Waste County Council of Governments, Wasatch Front Regional Council, and Central Weaver Sewer and Improvement District. Councilman Halverson will continue to represent South Weaver on the Hill Air Force Base Restoration Advisor Board. Any discussion to this? If not, I need a motion to approve this.
I thought I was on fishing, like fly fishing.
I got that one,
Okay.
but you can come with me.
I move to approve resolution 2203.
I'll second.
With that, then we'll start with the roll call vote from Councilman Dills.
Aye.
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 Okay, so moved.
Mayor, can I request a 5-minute break?
Sure. It would be, that might be good. I was gonna request that about right,
There you go.
right in the middle of the private right of way. I was gonna request that.
As long as we don't have 2 members on the fishing, or 3 members on the fishing board, I think we'll be okay.
Thank you, Marty.
Marty, you may be stay for the private roadway to get to that. You can try that out.
So if they were here, they'd have given you
The blue ones were.
No, I'm not a cold water drinker.
Oh, aren't you?
Well, I am if it's hot, but otherwise, it's gotta be hot outside, or otherwise. Mostly water. Probably 10, 15 years ago, I started getting heartburn and I quit drinking. I know every once in a while I'll have one, but I don't really. Yeah. The diet tastes horrible.
Usually, if you have even a nice.
Yeah. I agree.
I do.
I agree. No, I am not a big soda drinker.
I'm not either. I gotta get that up here.
I went a while. I think I went like 5 years without one. But I'm not quite, I mean, every once in a
Well,
while.
I have it every once in a while.
I have one every once in a while. But, no, I don't. There was a line. Two things. I know that when I went down to number, because otherwise it can't live for 3 or 4 years. I actually thought, well, I thought he was one of them. I didn't. I mean, I read that, but thank you. No, I don't. You do. You do. You're sitting right there.
Right way.
Yeah.
I did deal with.
I just had my like.
You learned not to say yes anymore. I was. That's why I tried to watch it. I wasn't even on that. Perfect. I was there. That's where we come from. Yeah.
My electrician, I don't know.
I had nuts now or so. Oh, protein.
Oh, Ben. That, yeah, I'll leave that.
Okay, thank you for asking for that break. I think we all needed that. Turn my mic back on here. Our next resolution, 22-4, Public Works Retention Basin Relocation and Fencing Project. We're going to turn the time to Dave to speak on this.
Thank you, Mayor. When we purchased the Public Works property, as part of that agreement, we agreed that we would fence our new property along the border there between Elite Training, the soccer facility, and that we would also relocate that detention basin that is kind of across property lines. And so the agreement specifically stated within 6 months we would do that. It's been longer than that. We've had very direct conversations with Kelly Park of Elite Training, and he's granted extension for that, knowing that we've been in process to get that done. We finally got bids back for the project, and Brandon and Jones and Associates was able to bid that out, and it came back. We had 2 sections for it, right, to see if it was better to separate those as 2 separate projects or to do it just as one joint project. In the end, staff is recommending to do it as one joint project. And you saw in the item memo there who we are recommending based on the lowest bid for that joint project. It's a company that we haven't used before in South Weber, and so there was phone calls made, references checked, and staff feels comfortable recommending them as the lowest bidder to do that work. One thing to note is that the project budget was such where this came back more than what we originally had budgeted for. Because the nature of this project is the new public works facility, where we had budgeted came out of the capital projects fund. However, all of the utility funds are an option and a resource to be able to do this project as it will function as a facility for all of the different funds. So the recommendation from staff is to look at spreading out the project costs across funds, which we would do for the entirety of the building and the entirety of the project. Up till this point, we've chosen to just use capital project fund money, and then once a funding mechanism for the entirety of the building, bonding and looking at other resources or whatnot, at that point we intended to break out the funding and use some of the other funds from the enterprise funds. We feel like we could start doing that now and accomplish this project as we're supposed to. No, that's the background. In addition, we don't have a specific breakdown of how we would do that. It would have to come back as a specific budget amendment to show where the amounts would break down. But we do have percentages of the overall project and how it would align out. So it would come out equally from the other utility funds. So we're happy to answer questions. Brandon is here, who did the bidding, and any other questions you have.
Thank you, Dave. Council, do you have questions or concerns?
You always look at me when you say that. My only question is, since this is the first time we're using them, was a financial analysis done to make sure that they're, solvent enough to be able to handle a large scale project like this?
The direct question or answer to that is no. We can.
Do you think it's necessary?
I don't.
Okay.
Not for this project.
That's good to know.
So I have a few questions. You mentioned that, based on the results of your evaluation, you're picking the 3XL Inc., whatever. What were your criteria? It's obviously not cost, because there's lower cost options. And that's the second question I have is, our original engineering estimate was 90,000. Everything we got back was significantly more than that. The Rhino Rock was supposed to be 30,000 less, and it ended up only being 5,000 less per everybody, it seemed like. So are we underestimating what Rhino Rock costs, or are we getting a really, really good deal with the other? So I'm,
No,
again,
I
I'm
think-
throwing too many questions at
Yeah.
you. Let's go one at a time.
Okay. What is your
So the
first
first one,
question?
what was your main criteria for this? Obviously, it's not only cost.
So let's stress distinction between the contractor and the fence material selection. So we did an analysis on the fence material, and scored based on quality, durability, cost was one of them.
Right.
Longevity, aesthetic appeal, availability, and installation requirements. And based on those scores, the Olympus precast verticrete fence came back the highest. Harper precast was very close behind them. Stone Tree was close behind them. Rhino Rock and Simtech actually fell quite a bit lower, mostly due to their durability and longevity.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
That does on that one, yeah, thanks.
What's your next question?
So then the other one was, why were we $30,000 off on our estimate for the Rhino Rock versus the, whatever it is, Crete? I don't remember what.
Well, when the 90,000 was put in the budget, I don't recall that we actually put in an actual engineer's estimate. I don't actually recall exactly how we came up with the 90,000.
The 90,000 was money that was left over and rebudgeted
right.
from the property purchase.
Oh, that's
So we
right.
originally budgeted 800,000 for the property purchase. That came in around 600,000. We then had
We allocated it,
100,000 that we said we wanted for architect work.
And another 100.
And then that was the remainder.
So my last question is, how much is this cost inflated just because of concrete shortages and other things? And I know construction prices supposedly never come down. But if we were to, delay it, we're already beyond the 6 months. If we were to delay it, is there any thought that costs would come down?
I don't have a crystal ball, as you know, but we do try to just watch trends of, through our office, and that we do represent a lot of cities, and they bid, and so therefore we bid a lot of projects. So I think we're fairly tied into the market, so to speak. I'm not seeing any trend or any hope, unfortunately. I wish so badly that it was different, but I'm not seeing anything that's indicating to me that waiting would do any good on the cost.
All right, thank you.
That's my personal opinion.
I have just a few questions. So where is this fence going?
No.
Were you looking at me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it going around our, four?
No, it's only dividing, this is only dividing the soccer complex or property from the Public Works property.
Okay, so is it going along the, eastern border at all?
Nope.
No, it's
Okay.
going from the eastern corner of the access road from South Weaver Drive
What?
North.
Hold on.
up north and then east and west over to
Okay,
Yes.
Over to
And
the
all the
Skank
way
property.
over to the Skank property.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's the
From the
Okay.
Skank
south
property
side
over
of our
and then-
property
and then up our
sliver
access
along
road.
the
Okay.
access road.
so my question was, and it sounds like you just answered it, but when we did the soccer complex CUP, he was to fence from basically South Weaver Drive to the end of it on the east side. That's still the case for Kelly to do?
He's
completed
fenced.
It's done.
his
It's done.
Yeah.
CUP
Okay,
requirement.
so we didn't pay for that fence,
No.
that portion. Okay,
No.
I had a question from a resident, and I was pretty sure that was the answer, but we're just dividing ours from the soccer complex to where the Public Works building is,
Right.
and nothing along the western edge
Nope.
currently? Okay. And then this is some questions I got from a resident. I'm just going to read them so I make sure to get this correct. She asked, is moving the basin going to affect the open canal behind the houses on Harper Way? And is it going, the canal will be covered with the new development west of Harper Way going in?
So Ask the first question again.
Is moving the basin going to affect the open canal behind the houses on Harper Way?
No.
Are they going to cover the canal when the development comes in later?
When the city develops the property, yes, the canal will be piped.
Okay, and then as far as the trees, will we be keeping those between Harper Way and the Public Works Building? That vegetation?
We're not doing anything with that right now.
So it's
This is just simply to get
You know,
the retention basin moved far enough north that we can fence across there.
when it comes time to build that building, is there any plans to remove that vegetation?
There's no plans to remove the vegetation right now.
Okay. That's all my
That's
question.
part of what will be fleshed out with the architect, is
Okay.
some of the site and things like that. Very early work by all of the different architects that we interviewed. A few of them actually did a couple of preliminary site layouts. None of them touched anything above the power lines. Anything north of the
North
power
of the power
lines.
lines.
Yeah.
I'm all above, like.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we didn't
It's a
plan
long
on building
night.
above the power lines, exactly. North of the power lines.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Sometimes language is hard.
Sorry, I did have one more question. We had the completion date, March 31st, 2022.
Yeah, that's obviously subject to availability of materials. So that date may need to change a little bit, but the idea was to try to get that installed before the soccer season is really rolling and they're using stuff outside.
Mayor brings up a good point. How much does the weather and cold temperatures play into this?
It doesn't affect it. I mean, they have to compensate for it and make sure that they install the right things, but it doesn't. They can install in this type of weather, and it doesn't compromise the fence in any way.
Other than, I mean, if it was rainy and warm and I'm getting the equipment in and out, might affect. That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, installing the product, they can do a lot
Right.
of things to.
Yeah, I guess maybe what I'm trying to say is I'm not concerned that there will be any detrimental impacts based or of the installation based on the
Right.
weather.
Yeah.
But yes, they'll have to
Weather could
deal
be
with.
late starting.
Factors of when they
Especially
can
down there
install.
with the water problem that there is.
Yes,
you know.
yes. They'll have to deal with the conditions that are there.
Do we have any type of language in the contracts relative to completing on time or not?
We do, yes.
So if they're
So-
X days or weeks late, there's,
So, right, yeah, there's a penalty, a per day penalty for not completing on time. So if their lead times are going to cause this to go past that date, then they would need to request that
come
we
back and
extend the date.
renegotiate. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So the only two quick questions I have is, there was mentioned that when the facility is built, the staff is still encouraging to have an 8-foot fence. Right?
As we've looked at it, we feel like a 6-foot fence between the soccer facility and our facility is adequate. However, around the residential areas, we would think that an 8-foot fence, 8-foot.
I just didn't want to put this in and then come and tear it out.
No,
Even if
we
it's 5
felt
years
like
down the road,
it-
that's too much money to tear out.
Yeah.
So,
Right. No, the idea is this is very long-term. This is a long-term durable fence.
If you feel like we should do a different size of fence, you know, that's up for
with
consideration.
the elevations, I'm perfectly happy with a 6-foot fence.
So just so I understand, because there's a lot of money being thrown around, what kind of fence are we talking about? This sounds like a border fence, for the price. Are we just talking a cinder block wall, or what is this?
Precast.
If you have been on, maybe, let's see, I can think of an example, like Layton Parkway.
Mhm.
If you've been down there and they've got that masonry fence that kind of runs along That's the
Okay.
type of fence that this would be.
Is
Okay.
it similar to the one the RV park put in?
Yes.
Yeah, which is
Except-
more durable than what you've seen up here on 84. 84, those panels are hollow
Right.
and like soccer balls would and kids would destroy them. It looks concrete and durable, but it's not.
Right. It's hollow
Yeah,
core.
This
Yeah,
isn't.
this is solid.
This is solid. This is what will last the test of time here. So
Okay.
So my only question, well, I might have answered it. Never mind, I figured it out.
you're welcome.
Well done. Thank you, thank you.
So what's the distance between their existing fence and this fence?
There's
Or is there not?
There's not a fence.
There's not a fence there right
Their
now.
existing fence,
Will be our fence.
yeah, they don't have a fence
Okay.
where we're putting this, because it was all their property. They owned it all. And now we're gonna divide
So
what
what
we
do-
purchased from
okay.
what they retained.
So what allowance or is gonna occur when we got balls going over the fence? They're just gonna jump it?
We keep them. We keep all their balls.
I don't think so.
I would imagine Public Works will throw them back.
Well, and right now they can go down around Harper Way after practice or after whatever and get them eventually, because they're not.
They could scale.
No,
No.
no, that's another reason why this particular fence we feel is the best, because I believe it provides an added level of safety, because it's not something you can scale.
Okay.
Very easily, at least.
Well, You can get over it, Brandon.
Where there's a will, there's a way, I guess.
I think that at some point, right, if soccer balls become a major issue, a netting or something where, behind the goals could be provided or. that could be
Rottweilers.
Will that be above the power lines as well?
Probably, they'd have to kick it pretty high, but, yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, then I would ask for a motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2222-04, awarding contract of retention basin and relocation of fencing for the new Public Works facility or Public Works location to 3XL Inc. for section A for 35,877 and section B for 102,473 for a total of 138,350.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Have a roll call vote then, starting with Blair.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Resolution 2205, Public Works Building Architect. Dave's also going to speak on this.
This has been a long time coming and I'm really excited about this one. We put out a request for qualifications for architectural design services for this facility, specific to just a preliminary design, kind of a programming needs assessment and a 30% preliminary design to help us get to a budget number that we could then use for budgeting purposes and financing purposes. We published that RFQ. We received responses. The Municipal Utilities Committee initially took a look at it, and the members of that committee that are members of the council provided a little bit of direction on how to proceed, but then stepped back and let staff do the evaluation and the interviews. And so we brought in 4 firms for interviews, and it was a unanimous decision based on the qualifications, based on the references that we checked, the projects that they've done, and the interview that we did to recommend CRSA. They have done a number of these types of buildings. They're doing a couple of them right now for some cities in Davis County. And they were just really clear-cut winners in our minds. And so we bring them forward for recommendation to award the project to them. The way that the finances work in this scenario, state law makes it very clear that it's a qualifications-based selection. And then from there, we have conversation about whether we can get a contract under budget. We've had some preliminary conversations with them to ensure that that's the case, and we can do that. And so we're not concerned as a staff that they would propose something above and beyond what we can handle from the budget that we've already got established.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any questions, discussions?
I have one. Just to make sure I understand what we're proposing here. I mean, the language says we're picking them as the architect for the preliminary design and also tasking staff with negotiating a contract. Is that negotiating the contract for the final design or negotiating
No,
a
just
contract?
for this portion to get us the preliminary design. So typical architecture costs, as they've been described to us, are 1% of the final project cost is what goes to this initial programming portion that we're doing right now. It's evaluation of space needs, doing just a general kind of blocks and seeing what that could look like, doing basic cost estimates, right? Square footage times typical cost per square foot. That gets us a rough budget number. That amount is usually 1% of the final product. And so they did a real rough calculation to come up with the number. And then from there, we had a discussion about whether that fits into the budget or not and how much leeway is there. Again, just kind of preliminary conversation. And so they don't always charge 1% of the total. It's kind of a chicken and an egg conversation in that regard, right? And so in the end, what they told us is we'd establish just here's the cost to do the preliminary design work, and that's it. If we were to then want to do final design with this same firm, if we're happy with them, we would have to do a second contract for the rest of the design work and the construction documents. So that's not part of this initial amount.
So we've given them a cost of what we're willing to pay for the preliminary design.
No. They've given us a general number of what, again, based on square footage that they just threw on a piece of paper and cost per
in
square
the
foot.
original interview, those numbers couldn't be discussed by state law. So it's all just qualifications. And that's, we kind of went down that road when we were on the committee trying to decide how to do it. But so basically now, staff will sit down and negotiate, come up with a negotiate for the price. But if they don't agree on a price, it doesn't bind us in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
That's what we're approving in that, to let them enter that negotiation and start those proceedings.
That was my
Yeah.
concern.
Yes.
If you're okay with,
Blank check to just.
No.
go ahead and do it all.
No,
You at any point can say, whoa, this is not gonna work.
yeah.
yeah, so we would then go to them and say, okay, what's the final cost proposal? We could work with them to try to narrow that down, get us the best deal for this portion of the project. And if that's under the budgeted amount that the council has already pre-approved, then we would be able to move forward. If we can't come to terms, then we would come back with a second selection and say, this is the company that we would then go with next, and try to go negotiate with them to try to get under budget.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Not, we'll ask for a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve resolution 22-05, Public Works Building Architect for CRSA.
Second,
I'll second that.
we have a second. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with Commissioner, or I want to say, I knew I'd do that. Councilman Deals.
Aye.
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 I'll abstain due to a conflict of interest.
Mayor, just as an added piece of information, since the selection has been made, the process now will be a series of meetings with them to discuss space needs and things like that. I know that they have a couple of their project teams that are out of town this upcoming week. And so we'll begin meeting with them, again, based on negotiation. If we come to terms, we'll begin meeting with them before the end of this month. So we're going to get started right away with them and hopefully move down that road pretty quickly. We did have, like I said, an initial conversation about project costs, and they ended up with a very large number. And I hope that we're nowhere near the $21 million number that came out for looking at project costs for the entirety of the space. The scope that they had was beyond what our scope really is. And they explained in their interviews that one of the things they like to do is really get numbers out in front of people early and then work on the final details there. But so you know, that was the sticker shock that we had the other day when they put a number on paper for us. So we were able to talk off of that even initially before a selection was made. But we're excited to work with them. They were really good in interview, and again, the process to select them, I feel, was very thorough. So we're going to meet with them very quickly and begin that process.
So can I just ask a quick question on that? Will that be as part of the Municipal Utilities Committee, or will that be part of the evaluation committee consisting of Trevor Cahoon, Mark Larson, Mac, Brandon Jones, and David Larson?
Thanks for putting last names to everybody there but Mac.
Mac's like a standalone.
The evaluation committee was just for selection. Now moving through the project, other people will be involved.
Thank you.
I don't know if that will specifically fall on the Municipal Utilities Committee. I think all council members will be able to have a role to play in that, or at least be invited to play a role. I know that CRSA is really good with kind of the public process of these types of projects. That was something that really stood out with them. And so, yeah, as those meetings happen, council will be informed of when and how you will be involved in that.
Good, I think that's what we need.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, resolution 22-6, Connex franchise agreement. A little background on that. After extensive research by the Municipal Utilities Committee and City Council work sessions on September the 21st and October the 5th, 2021, the council unanimously agreed in a meeting on October 26, 2021, to have the staff work on drafting a franchise agreement with Connex to bring fiber to the premises in South Weber City. Attached is the agreement. And so let's have a discussion on that. Any discussion?
Let's not disprove it. I'm just kidding.
My simple question is, do you have any worries at all? Where might we get bit? I mean, it looks really good.
Me personally, no. I won't speak for others that are involved in the review of the agreement.
My only concern was to make sure that there was provision in there so that if they install a line and we come back to do a public works project of some sort and they're in the way, that they have to pay to move themselves. And Jamie made sure that that was in there, so I'm comfortable.
Have they seen this agreement yet?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And so this is, as I was reading through it, I believe it said that this is a non-inclusive, or not inclusive. Nobody else is being prevented from coming in and putting in their own stuff, that the city still works with all of them. And okay. It's late, so I just lost the word that I was thinking of. Exclusive. Exclusive. Thank you.
Exclusive.
Okay.
At what point do they anticipate starting construction? Tomorrow?
That was my question too.
They said like 30 days or something.
Yeah. So the next steps would be they would meet with staff. We would have kind of a projects kickoff meeting and a logistics conversation about how that would go. But the most important thing for them is marketing. They would begin a marketing campaign throughout the city to determine what locations get it first. So of course, they're their own private company. They get to choose where they'll make the most money the most quickly. And so we'll be involved from a city standpoint in helping market that and helping make sure that citizens know that this is city supported, essentially, that we're excited about them coming in, so they don't feel like there's questions of legitimacy or anything like that. So we'll let them know tomorrow morning that this is where we're at, that the agreement would be approved, and then they would jump right in and start the marketing process, and we would start the logistical process of the project.
Great, thank you.
So during this initial period, I also saw in the contract that they were saying that there was a provision in case they were bought out by another company. What's the concern on that one? Could we literally have another company come in, buy all of them, buy their lines, and then we have to renegotiate everything again? Or contract says this is the same contract that it goes through, that it has a time and date? Or
Trying to turn to those provisions just to refresh my memory, but I believe the provision is that the city makes a approval, but the agreement would remain as is.
okay.
No further questions. We'd ask for a motion.
Joel wants to make this motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2206, Connects franchise agreement. So get it
I'll
done.
second it.
We have a motion and a second. Do a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Don't say no once, Joel, and you'll get it passed.
Waiting for the animal care.
Okay, it's next. Okay, resolution 22-07, Davis and Weber County Canal Company encroachment agreement. Public Works has been working with the Davis and Weber County Canal Company for months to obtain access to certain city-owned properties through DWCCC-owned property to perform necessary ongoing maintenance processes. The agreement under consideration today is the result of the work between both entities, staff, and is now ready for the council to review and consider. In the past, this type of access has been granted verbally, but now both entities feel that it is necessary to officially agree upon and document the access, including any and all conditions related to such. Basically, the agreement says that South Weber City is granted right to access and traverse DWCCC property in specific areas shown in the exhibits that the city provides necessary or notice, and is responsible for any damages caused due to the encroachment. Any discussions on this motion or on this resolution? Pretty basic.
I just commend the staff for remembering to do it, because this has been sitting there as a whole for a while now, so thank you for doing it.
I just have one question on item 3 of the agreement. It says that the city will be responsible for fencing and security measures. Is that something, I think most of these are already fenced, but as far as security measures, is there anything that we plan to do, or is there any fencing that will be required of us?
I interpret that as like temporary construction fencing. Is that not the case?
I think it's all, I think
No.
we're required to have those.
I think that there may be, I might be speaking out of turn bit here, but I think there may be a gate or something that they wanted to install at one of the locations, and I think the agreement's just saying, if you're gonna do that, then, you know, that's on you. We'll have to approve it.
Right.
That's a provision that speaks to damaging existing
Okay.
features of the canal and the canal area. I don't think it makes the city responsible for installing new fences, new security measures. It's just if there's any damage to the fences, security measures, things like that that exist,
Okay.
we would be responsible for that.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other discussion? Not, we'll ask for a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve resolution 22-07, Davis and Weber Canal Davis and Weber County Canal Company encroachment agreement.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Start with the roll call vote with Councilman Dills.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Resolution 2208, animal control contract. In 2006, South Weber contracted with Davis County to provide animal services each year. An amendment is passed which updates the cost for services based on expected shortfalls in the budget revenue, capital projects for the shelter, and number of billable calls within the city. In 2001, the combination costs were $20,899.59. This year has increased by over $3,000 for a total of $24,127.79. Discussion on this resolution.
Yeah, I've got about 2 pages of questions on this. But no, I do have a question on it. So we're getting charged per call. Do they provide us with any information on what the calls are about? I mean, are we talking about lost dogs, loose dogs, cats, or cougars roaming the area? I mean, what is it, and is there any pattern to it?
They do provide a report at certain intervals, not monthly necessarily, but at least quarterly. We get a report there typically, and they are pretty standard calls. We don't have very wide variety of types of call.
So with the price continually going up, is that mainly because of their costs going up like everything else in the world right now? Or do we have a problem on our side that we really need to start addressing about dogs, cats, and cougars?
Some of both,
Raccoons
right?
and
The number of calls are increasing and the cost per call does increase a little bit too. Yeah, so it's a combination there, but there's nothing that really jumps out as a dramatic increase that makes it feel like something's out of the norm.
Okay, I was just wondering if we have, if the main call is a lot of loose dogs, if we started putting enforcement more towards, the leash laws and a few of these other kind of things or something, if that would bring down the cost. But it's not a strong cost compared to a wall that we're putting up. So.
I do think it's worth, reviewing the types of calls that we get in those reports and seeing if there's trends and adding a level of data analysis to that to see, again, that kind of comprehensive view. Let's look at the report, see if there's other levers and pulleys we can use to decrease cost if possible.
Okay, thank you.
So it's on billable calls. Is that any call where they respond out to the city to take care of a situation?
I don't know if
service,
every
does
type
that-
of call is billable or
I
not.
thought most of the billable calls were animal pickup, like.
Well, they
Actually,
stopped doing the wildlife.
Yeah.
So what pickup would they be doing?
I think it would be a pickup for a stray or something
stray
like that.
dog.
So I think that's the billable. I don't know if it's a nuisance. And then they pick it up and then they bill it, but I know it had something to do with pickup.
They have a new director that just recently offered to come to a council meeting and talk about their programs and services and, kind of the future needs that they have. I think that's a great opportunity
I
to
think
maybe
that-
have some of those questions of what counts as a billable call, what doesn't. Have them bring a report along with them to help us understand what that means for our city a little bit more deeply on the council level.
Maybe they could bring a cat for Haley.
I love cats.
I know.
I'm just
Bring
hoping
one
it's like
and
the
drop
storm
them off.
drain. for
I think that
you.
would be good. Can you set that up?
Okay,
with them?
yeah, we'll reach out and try
Yeah.
to arrange that.
So where are these details of their calls? And because they're average billable calls, so it's over the past 2 years. So if we made a big jump, we must have had a really big jump this year compared to last year, or the rest of the county dropped significantly. It'd be nice to just look at those numbers and understand,
Okay.
so we can, as you mentioned, focus on, is there something we can do to reduce that?
Well, that dispositioning would help because I'll be honest, my office window looks out to the street. I've never seen one of them drive by. So I'm assuming it's other types of calls or something, but I have no idea. So I'd really love to see those numbers.
Okay. we can get those reports to you.
Thank you. Do you really? Well, yeah, on that side of the.
Yeah,
Okay,
the bumps
any-
of Cornelia Drive, of course.
Hey. Any further discussion? If not, we'll ask for a motion.
I got this one.
Councilman Dale?
I move to approve Resolution 22-08, adopting amendment number 7 to the Davis County Animal Care Contract.
I'll second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. Do a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Hey, we made it to the end.
Wait,
No, we
wait,
didn't.
wait till our discussion item.
We've got one discussion item here for the legislation. So the 2022 general session of the state legislature is from January the 18th to March 4th. The bills that are presented in both the House and the Senate can greatly affect municipalities. The Utah League of Cities and Towns has a legislative policy committee with representations from all the cities and towns. They meet weekly to evaluate bills and determine official positions on legislation. South Weber's 3 representatives will report to the council and the citizens at each council meeting during the session to keep everyone aware of the progress of favorable or disadvantageous bills. So we need 3 representatives to be on that. Dave, you're one of them.
So traditionally, the mayor, the city manager, and 1 council member has been our official representatives to the
So
LPC. Wayne had filled that role. I know Haley had been an alternate. The league allows all of you to be alternates, but if you all wanted to participate, however, only 3 are considered voting members.
So
I
we
would-
need
I
one
would,
council.
I would nominate Haley.
I'll volunteer as tribute.
Was that Haley?
But I will-
She's going
I'll
back to
volunteer as tribute.
Movies.
Yes.
Do we need to go?
I'll second it.
Is that Monday at noon? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Bill?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, during the session, it's Monday at noon. During the interim, it's usually once a month.
Okay.
And I would volunteer to be an alternate because I'm down there a bunch anyway.
Are they still doing it Zoom mostly, or do they anticipate
They'll
doing it
have
Zoom?
both options, in person and Zoom.
Okay.
Discussion items and
I have one item, just if we can add it to an agenda or to reconvene our short-term rental code committee. We talked about when we put the code together as a committee that, and as we came back to council, that we would review that. And I think in light of some other discussions, I think we need to review that code. And I think it can maybe even be done as a committee unless the whole council wants to do it and then bring back recommendations. But I personally have several changes I think that we missed as a code committee. So not the whole code committee, but on the short-term rental committee. So, but I believe,
If we make changes to that code, is it the same thing? If they're already operating, it goes to the old code, or will it go to the new code? If we were to make changes?
It depends on, I know that's a
I
very
hate it when you
lawyerly
say that,
answer.
Jamie.
I hate that. It depends on the nature of the changes. You know, some could be related to like civil disobedience, nuisance, those kinds of things. And that would apply going forward regardless. There are other changes that may relate to land use entitlements, and those, if somebody's already operating one, then they would
they would be
they'd
grandfathered
basically-
in.
Yeah, they'd be grandfathered in.
Well, but wouldn't that matter if they actually are legally
They have,
running
Yes.
that?
Yeah,
So if they
without
don't-
question.
So if they don't have a business license and they are doing it just ad hoc, then they are not covered under any type of.
That's correct. But if
Okay.
they're legally operating today, then they would.
Okay.
they'd
and
be
that's why I
entitled
would like to
continue.
do that sooner than later.
Yes.
Please.
So the other question along those lines though is every year the business license needs to be renewed, right? Short-term rental would fall
Correct.
under that. So
Right.
if we do make a change every year, they would then have to agree to the new code.
You could put it in effect in that way.
Okay.
for
So
certain things.
in order to
And then
do that, though, we also need another committee member.
I will definitely be part of that if allowed.
And then Blair, if you're okay with it, I'll ask Lisa to make a special note on the meeting minutes that this conversation be reflected, because this can be noted as kind of the initiation of that code amendment process.
That would be great.
That way, if anybody comes in with an application from today
We
forward,
started.
we have a 6-month window to make the edits and changes that you desire to make.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Blair.
That was all I had.
I have a couple.
Oh, I do
Go for
too.
it, Ann.
Okay, mine's really easy. I just wanted to thank Paul for bringing to attention our standardized numbering for resolutions. Can we just make sure we do that? Either make it say 22 or 2022, either way, but make it consistent. I think that would be appropriate. All right, thank you. That was it.
Oh, no. We forgot something on that private roads, and that was, requiring part of the plan to have proof of offering services for garbage and mail. And I was wondering if we could amend that that ordinance to include that pending we update development plan with approval of guaranteed of services, or is that something that we just need to discuss later? Because it wouldn't apply to anything that's being currently in process.
Technically, because of rules of order, it's already been passed, so that can't go backwards, but
But with review of a development process, we could include that as a staff direction. You can say direct staff to include that in the development process and make that ordinance change in a future date.
Okay, but it wouldn't apply to anything currently underway, correct? They're vested.
No.
Okay.
You wouldn't have been able to make that change to the development process anyway in the same.
So,
ordinance.
so is staff considering that to
As
be
a-
asked
as a
to-
directive,
as a
yes.
directive? Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, thank you. And then just in regards to the comments that we had in public comment, can we get an update on UDOT sign? I know that we sent them back with calculations for what? I don't,
Yeah,
where
so
are we at?
connecting with them over the holidays has been problematic, but I will make another effort to get in touch with them.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just jump on that
Mhm.
discussion? What trumps, excuse me, city code or state code? So if we had a city code that no road could be more than 40 miles per hour, they would still put 45 there?
If it's a state road, on a state road, they would control.
Okay.
On a city road, the city ordinance would control.
All right, thank you.
And then just my last one was just a discussion on conflict of interest. I heard from two in favor, heard from two, we're good with the way it is. So I'm not really sure if that's something that we would like to revisit as far as creating a better definition of what is considered conflict and the appropriate response to that, or is that something that the council favors looking into? I wasn't clear on that.
obviously, you know my opinion on it. I would appreciate having a stronger, and when I say stronger, the Municipal Officers Ethics Act actually does a really good job of describing here's exactly what a conflict of interest is. It's not your neighbor. It's not, I'm buddies. It talks about a financial interest or a financial gain, meaning anything from a loan, to betterment of your own job or position or any of those kind of things. And then they also talk about the aid and, of course, what it takes to make this a felony charge. I think one of the things that we could do when I was trying to express on it was that instead of it being a open loop right now or open hole right now where I can stand up and declare and say, yep, I've got a conflict with this, and yet I can still participate in all of the discussions and do a vote. Now, most every time we're always going to pull out of, and recuse ourselves. I think having some type of there's a couple cities that have actually put it that say this is the point where it now goes to the city attorney to be able to judge, is this an actual conflict of interest? And if so, then that statute or part of city code would say you now recuse yourself from the discussion. So it's mandatory instead of voluntary, because everyone we know is always going to be voluntary, but this is to build the trust and protect the city officials so that nobody can ever question it. That was my intent on it, and I don't know how everybody else feels. I just really, from previous years, think that we really need to protect and build the trust back with the citizens and let them know there's none of that going on, and there's not even an appearance of it anywhere.
So it kind of gives, in a way, a definition of what is considered a conflict to the point that you need to recuse yourself. Am I understanding you correctly?
Well, and state code already says that. So it really is just kind of a understanding it, and then instead of optional recusal, then it is a required or mandatory recusal.
Okay.
Or at least not being able to vote. Because the state code, if I'm wrong, please let me know. I don't think it actually requires any type of.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. Forgive me, Blair.
No, I just wondered, because you're going to answer his question, can that not be an item that we discuss at the retreat? And that we also decide whether, I mean, we've had training on it, obviously. We don't have a set thing. I mean, most of us know if it's financial gain, you recuse yourself, but, and so, there can be a policy. It's a pretty hard one to put into policy.
Yeah.
Because everybody's in a different situation. And so it's a hard one to draw a fine line on, other than the financial gain aspect or personal gain.
I wouldn't recommend deviating from the definitions in state code of what is and what isn't a conflict of interest, or what is or isn't a situation that would stand you to gain, or where it would be inappropriate for you to steer someone's direction. But if I understand Councilman Dills correctly, what he's recommending is state law requires that conflicts be stated openly. It doesn't go so far as to require that a council member recuse him or herself from discussion or action on an item where they have a conflict of interest. More often than not, council members handle it exactly like we saw today, where they'll announce that they have a conflict of interest. They would announce the basis for that conflict of interest, and then would recuse themselves from acting on the item. And then I would recommend, if there's ever a circumstance where you have any question about whether you do have a conflict of interest, or where you plan on announcing or working through a conflict during a meeting, you can always contact me ahead of time, and I can help advise you on what would be prudent. If you want to go further and put something into policy or into code, then I think that'd be a good retreat topic, and something we could work through and help you put something into place that you think would be appropriate there.
Okay. On reports, new business. What?
No.
We good?
Yeah.
Okay. On handling new business, this is what I would like to do. And the reason for doing this is I don't want to put anyone here on the spot or anyone to feel uncomfortable in any way. So what I would like to, if you've got new business that you would like to discuss at City Council, that you give me a call first and we discuss that item, and then determine if that's something that we want to discuss at City Council meetings. Is that good with everyone?
We would have to ask your approval to be able to bring something up.
I don't know that we need, we just want to discuss it.
Well,
In new business?
Yeah. So just in the category of new business.
Just in the category of new business.
Okay. So we would still have an opportunity, though, to be able to, during our own personal time or our own time, be able to say, this is an issue that I want to bring before the council.
I think we want to discuss that, and if I feel that it's going to put someone on the spot or be uncomfortable for someone, then I probably would suggest not to. Yeah.
It could also be put in discussion items if you needed it there, I guess, but.
So just sorry, Joel, didn't mean to cut you off. Just a quick question. So in the past, we've used new business as a way to also respond to public comment since we weren't able to do it as a part of an agenda item. For example, the UDOT, we had a comment on, hey, what's going on with UDOT, and taking that time to be able to ask that. Is that something that would be
That's fine.
appropriate?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mayor, can I ask a clarifying question?
Go ahead.
I think in the past, new business has been brought up, from council members saying, this is something I'd like to discuss as a specific item on a future agenda. Are you suggesting that if a council member brings that up and other council members don't necessarily want to discuss that, that it puts them on the spot to say, no, we don't want to discuss that? And so that's what you're suggesting, is to have discussion of future agenda items go through you?
Right.
Okay.
Well, I think we kind of do that where the mayor sets the agenda itself. Yeah, and as long as we each still have the ability to bring up forth our own, because I don't think the balance of power allows for the executive branch to stifle any type of legislative items being brought forward. Nor do I think that it should. There is that balance of it. But at the same time, whether it goes on the agenda, that has always been traditionally the chairman. But Robert's Rules of Order also has different ways of being able to bring it up as an individual, where as soon as you have the floor, you are able to make a motion or any of those kind of things. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, reports from the council and staff. Blair, we'll start with you.
I don't have anything to report.
Yeah, I do not have anything to report.
Glenn.
I have two quick items. On the Admin Finance Committee, we talked about trying to get the next auditor contract ready early this year, this month if possible. Can you give an update on where that stands?
Yeah, that has been drafted, the RFP essentially for auditor services. So that's been drafted. The deadline that we've given ourselves to publish that is the end of this month.
Okay, thank you. And then the second is just an update on the gravel pit dust issues. Over the last 3 weeks, we had two significant events. On December 21st, 22nd, that morning of the 22nd, a swath of resident snow turned brown. A lot of people noticed that and saw it. We've left 8 boxes out through the winter. And the unique thing about that was it was good to have the boxes because only 2 of those boxes had any measurable significant amount of dust, and it was to the amount of what our really bad weeks were, excuse me, in the middle of the summer. The other 6 boxes that weren't in a line had hardly any dust in them. And I haven't been able to prove this yet, but I believe UDOT and or Geneva had dumped a whole bunch of fresh dirt in their work that is straight upwind of those 2 boxes that had high amounts of dust. Monday morning, we had a significant wind. Oh, let me back up. On 21st, 22nd, the wind data from the 3 different locations in the valley didn't show any significant wind either, more than normal. I have locust trees in my front yard that have locust pods, and usually when there's high wind, they come down. There weren't locust pods down. So it was either a very localized tornado that went just straight west, or it may have been from that new dirt that had been dumped there and just got picked up through the normal stuff. So we need to work with UDOT on any construction that they're doing in the mouth of the canyon. So that's the thing I'd like staff to, if we can get a heads up on that, make sure they understand what they're dealing with when they're doing construction, so that they don't just dump loose dirt and not realize it's going to blow. So the other event happened yesterday morning. That one, we did have a significant 36 hours of extremely high winds that turned, there wasn't much snow left, but it made a much wider swath of dust everywhere. So, and that, the dust was coming out of both pits, visual, people could see it coming out of both pits. So that was a wind event that just really was bad for 36 hours there. So anyway, that's the update I have.
Fascinating. Thank you.
I have nothing to report, Mayor.
The only thing that I have is for staff. I'm new and struggling, and 220 pages. If any way that I could get like this next one tonight so I can start reading it, even if it's not official, red line everything, I'm fine. I just got to have some more leeway for these. That's my only request.
I'm going to just jump in here and just tell you, staff's done a tremendous job on making sure we have a week to review it, because there were times we would get it Friday at 5. And so I feel like they've got a pretty good process in place to have deadlines for everybody, a couple weeks in advance. So it's good reading for Sunday night.
If that was all it was for me. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Thank
No,
you.
we recognize that some packets are much more substantial than others, and this one had a lot of meat on the bone. So, yeah, we will try to provide as much as we can,
Just
as
any
early as
heads up.
possible. You bet.
They do. Okay. One item that I would like to bring up when we have our retreat that's coming up, as committee chair and co-chair, I would like for all of us to look and try and see some goals that we would like to see accomplished during the year on each committee. And if you chair a committee, that you could come with maybe 2 or 3 suggestions on what you would like to see or what goals you might, and then we'll all kind of get together and decide on each of the committees some of the goals that we would like to see accomplished during this next year. If we could do that before we go to our retreat, be thinking about that, I'd appreciate it. Back on this new business that I talked about, I don't wish to not bring items before the council. If you've got something that needs to be, my only thought is I don't want to have something sprung on someone here that might be uncomfortable to them or hurt them in any way. So that's my intention. I'm not trying to stop anyone from bringing forth any suggestions that they'd like. I would just kind of like to have a heads up on what is coming forth. So that's it. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Thank you.